realized their grievous error, yet by then, the entity had entirely lost its cognitive traits. The resulting text, upon interpretation, was laden with deeply insulting language. Nevertheless, the scientists fervently advocated for this fungal life form, leading to its successful inclusion in the 100 most influential intelligent beings in the galaxy. Returning to the matter at hand. Having confirmed that the individual before the obelisk was indeed Zaclon, Li Wenyuan prepared to have Grey Wind engage in dialogue on his behalf. The presence of this exiled prophet here must surely hold significance, for he had heard numerous accounts of Zaclon's deeds. As a renowned figure of the Lost Empire, he was likely privy to much knowledge. Perhaps he might even glean information pertinent to humanity. Before Grey Wind had the chance to speak, Zaclon, engulfed in sorrow, sensed an unsettling aura invading this place. Although his spiritual abilities were feeble, he possessed some degree of spiritual energy, and the presence of metal, so incongruous with the environment, triggered a response in his spiritual senses. Instantly alert, he turned his gaze towards the intruder, revealing an expression of disbelief. Are you a robot? No. How could a robot enter here? Yet, you indeed resemble one. Zaclon's spiritual perception had discerned that this humanoid entity was composed of countless tiny nanobots, and yet, these nanobots were still robots. At that moment, the foundational knowledge of spiritual energy he had been taught since birth crumbled before him. He could not comprehend how a robot, deemed devoid of true consciousness in a metaphysical society, could traverse the realm of virtual space, utterly undermining his understanding that consciousness dictated spiritual energy. However, Grey Wind did not respond to his inquiries, faithfully executing Li Wenyuan's demands. None of that matters. What is significant is why you are here. This does not appear to be a frequently accessible place. Why has this wayward prophet come here? Did you not claim to seek the chosen of the divine? Still reeling from shock, Zaclon managed to compose himself slightly, observing that the mechanical life form posed no immediate threat, and steadied his voice. This is a sacred site, one of the origins of our people. I have come to examine the prophecies left by the Harbinger, to discover a means of saving our populace. Since I have answered your query, might you also elucidate my uncertainties? Upon hearing Zaclon's words, Grey Wind glanced at the research vessel in the sky, quickly receiving a message from Li Wenyuan, and replied directly, I understand what you wish to inquire. I entered here using a spiritual crystal, which, by the way, was taken from your emerald tomb. Expecting Zaclon to react with outrage upon learning this, Grey Wind was taken aback when Zaclon seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. I see. The prophecy states that one day someone would retrieve that crystal. Since you were able to take it, your presence here is not problematic. Listening to Zaclon's self-soothing remarks, Li Wenyuan seized upon a key term. Prophecy. Could this be information left by humanity? After a moment of contemplation, he prompted Grey Wind to continue. Tell me about this prophecy. I am quite intrigued by the Harbinger. The prophecy resides upon this obelisk. If you are among those chosen by the Harbinger, you shall surely comprehend its meaning, Zaclon replied, stepping aside from in front of the obelisk and recounting the contents of the prophecy as they had interpreted it. Meanwhile, Li Wenyuan's research vessel and Grey Wind approached the obelisk, quickly unveiling the nature of the prophecy inscribed upon it. Influenced by the enlightening texts once left by humanity, Grey Wind had some understanding of human script. As for Li Wenyuan, he was certain that the so-called prophecy was inscribed in Chinese. However, given the stark disparity between the content of this oracle and the words of Zaclon, Grey Wind could no longer suppress his amusement and burst into laughter. The message inscribed upon the obelisk read, Curse those ancient relics of your forebears in the ethereal realm. Your disdain for our vessel is quite remarkable, is it not? Once the path is repaired, we shall see whether your home becomes obstructed. This was merely an expression of frustration, yet in Zaclon's interpretation, it morphed into a grand tale of redemption and sacrifice, with their watchers inheriting the spiritual legacy of the Harbingers who left this oracle. Well, indeed, it was an unexpectedly magnificent story. Li Wenyuan ultimately refrained from correcting their misinterpretation. Zaclon, too, displayed a joyful countenance, seemingly proud of his heritage. Yet, almost immediately, his expression dimmed, and with a hint of melancholy, he remarked, But who could have foreseen that, after the passage of time, our purpose would have morphed from following the Harbingers to the distorted form it has taken now? Is there a story behind this? Grey Wind inquired curiously, sensing from Zaclon's tone that they indeed shared a connection with humanity. This piqued Li Wenyuan's interest as well. It is but a trivial matter. Our origins are so distant that even we cannot recall them. Yet through the retrospective power of spirit, we have managed to glimpse our former selves. In those days, we were mere thoughtless beasts, but with the elusive guidance of the Harbingers, we touched the cosmos. The events that followed are shrouded in a lengthy void, and then we abruptly transitioned to our current existence. Through a series of explorations, we have firmly concluded that the Harbingers must have departed from this galaxy. The walled garden, a site of Harbinger relics, has been designated as a sacred place by us. Once, a saint endeavored to replicate the miracle of the Harbingers enlightening all things here. But he failed. His remains merged with this planet, awakening the latent spiritual potential within all its creatures. Yet this has not been sufficient to grant them wisdom. Through Zaclon's narrative, Li Wenyuan gleaned new information. The Watchers had seemingly engaged with humanity in ancient times. And that blank history might be the consequence of humanity confronting an unknown threat. After all, he himself did not comprehend the true nature of this guardian matrix. If the Watchers, as one of the lost empires, possessed such connections, might other lost empires share similar circumstances? Such questions began to stir within Li Wenyuan's mind. Yet before he could ponder further, he suddenly noticed Zhaklan's complexion turn ashen, as if he had sensed something dreadful. What is wrong? Greywind also observed this change and promptly inquired. Zhaklan spoke with difficulty, expressing his belief that they should hastily depart from this place, as something ominous had detonated. The timeline rewound a few minutes, revealing the third sanctified celestial body of the Watchers, known as the Pure Jewel. Situated near a miraculous atomic clock discovered long ago by a group of individuals. They presumed it to be a relic left by the Watchers and paid it little heed. The Watchers themselves exhibited no interest in this trivial atomic clock. In their eyes, as long as the sanctified celestial body remained uncolonized and its sanctity unmarred, they were content to leave it in disarray. However, they perhaps did not contemplate the possibility that this atomic clock could serve as a bomb capable of obliterating the planet. Or perhaps they did not believe that anyone would dare to challenge their authority with such an explosive. Consequently, when the countdown of the atomic clock reached its conclusion, it detonated. At that moment, the materialistic and forlorn empire of the travelers received the final signal emitted in the last second of the atomic clock. One of their scientists nodded in satisfaction, declaring, "Indeed, our clock bomb is precise to every nanosecond. It has meticulously counted down 42 years and 3 days. What reaction will these foolish idealists conjure? Can their deity identify the true culprit? Let us await the outcome." Chapter 76. The dawn of disturbance and explosion had occurred at the sanctified Pure Jewel of the Watchers. Yet, aside from a select few, the vast majority of civilizations remained blissfully unaware. Once a popular tourist destination, the Pure Jewel had now transformed into a toxic planet. A noxious atmosphere enveloped its surface, obliterating the possibility of survival for most forms of life. The once resplendent exterior lay ravaged by the atomic clock bomb, rendering it almost unrecognizable as a sanctuary. Given the unique significance of the sanctity in the minds of idealistic civilizations, particularly the Watchers, every individual with latent psychic potential felt a profound connection to it. Thus, when they sensed the abrupt disappearance of one of the sanctities, the Pure Jewel, they were collectively engulfed in shock. The Watchers immediately initiated a broadcast to the galaxy housing the Pure Jewel. That place was once sacred. You fail to grasp the true significance of the sin you have committed. However, you shall soon come to realize it. Where are you? The Watchers, intent on catching the culprits red-handed, found no vessels or signs of life near the Pure Jewel. The entire galaxy, apart from the orbiting planets and the now uninhabitable sanctity, was devoid of activity. It was as if the sanctity had detonated of its own accord. Yet, the Watchers knew this was impossible. Someone must have been responsible. The High Priest. The Holy Sentinels had begun to awaken, and the ascetics were fervently demanding severe retribution against those who had sullied their sanctity. One of the leaders of the Watchers, the High Priest, stood within the temple, receiving the psychic signals transmitted by his subordinates. The cultivation of telepathic abilities is an essential course for every practitioner, a convenience bestowed by psychic powers, and a significant means of enhancing racial cohesion. All individuals are interconnected, rendering even the most insidious plots seemingly transparent. However, the High Priest refrained from immediate action, instead utilizing a peculiar spherical machine before him to meticulously sense the atmosphere. He sought to gauge the collective spiritual strength of the populace, determining whether it had reached the threshold he deemed necessary. Since the departure of the prophet Zhaklan, this power had notably surged due to sorrow. The recent explosion at the sacred site appeared to have transcended every limitation. After a period of sensing, a satisfied smile graced his face, and he promptly conveyed a decree to the entire populace within the domain. The passage of time may have caused the galaxy to forget our existence. Even if we wish to withdraw from these troubling affairs, there are those who persist in testing our limits. Is it provocation? Disdain? Or do they believe we no longer possess our former glory? All shall be revealed upon our declaration of return to the galaxy. All disbelievers must choose between annihilation and submission. In synchrony with the High Priestess announcement, Zhaklan found himself in the garden atop the sacred site's walls. A troubling occurrence had darkened Zhaklan's expression, eliciting curiosity from Greywind. What has transpired? My psychic link can no longer perceive the existence of the other sacred site's purest treasure, which generally indicates irreversible damage to the sanctum. Yet, this was not the primary concern. The most pressing issue was that the Watchers would not relent. Although the entire galaxy remained oblivious to the consequences of destroying the sacred site, based on my understanding of the populace's fervor and the High Priest's disposition, it was evident that this incident would not merely lead to the punishment of the instigator. He grew anxious, pacing back and forth while gazing at the stars, seemingly contemplating a solution. You mean they will no longer remain silent, but will once again immerse themselves in the galaxy? Zhaklan affirmed confidently, adding, regrettably, I must return for a time, even though I have much more to discuss with you. My friend has already erred. and I do not wish for him to cause further harm. With that, Zaclan departed. Li Wenyuan pondered briefly before recalling a matter of importance. We must hasten to the purest treasure. I hope we are not too late. The Watchers had already interfered with 2 sacred sites linked to humanity. It was inconceivable that the third would remain untouched. However, from Zaclan's tone, it was clear that in due time, the Watchers might become less amenable, and the feasibility of approaching the sacred site was uncertain. Yet, what troubled him most were the human relics upon the purest treasure. The explosion capable of devastating the sanctum sounded formidable, and it was likely that by the time he arrived, there would be nothing left to uncover. Yet, as long as there remained a glimmer of hope, he felt compelled to attempt a rescue. Thus, once the gray wind returned to the research spacecraft, the transition towards the pure gem galaxy commenced. The familiar undulations of spatial reconfiguration were reactivated, and in the blink of an eye, the vessel's position shifted, arriving near the pure gem. The state of the galaxy appeared unchanged, save for the now toxic atmosphere enveloping the sacred pure gem. The atomic clock bomb had ravaged the surface ecosystem, releasing copious amounts of poisonous gas. However, this toxicity posed a threat solely to ordinary life forms. The only aspect that could affect mechanical entities was the presence of certain corrosive gases, which posed no danger to the research vessel and the gray wind. Surprisingly, as Li Wenyuan approached the pure gem, he detected residual human signals emanating from the surface. The remnants of humanity here stood unexpectedly resilient, having survived the explosion intact. Simultaneously, this explosion disrupted the psychic energy that should have surrounded the planet, allowing him to receive signals immediately. Unlike the other 2 sacred sites where meticulous exploration was required to uncover any traces. Based on the experiences at the previous 2 sacred sites, each appeared to harbor a rift in the virtual realm, typically where human relics were constructed. Following the source of the signal, he located the human remnants and the rift in question. Experimental virtual realm siphon. Description. It has long been our consensus that the immense power within the virtual realm should not be left untapped. Doing so would be a waste. While other civilizations may struggle to harness it efficiently, we can. Synchronously with the introduction of the relic, new technology was added to the tech tree. Virtual realm extraction experiment. Tech level 6. Description. We might be able to attempt to harness the power of the virtual realm for our own purposes, whether for development or destruction. If this theory proves viable, we may no longer be constrained by this dimension. Potential technology. None. What remained within this relic seemed to be an experimental machine, though it had been deactivated long before the explosion, rather than destroyed by it. Humanity may have tentatively utilized it, only to abandon it for reasons unknown. The Watchers had designated this place as sacred, and they must have discovered the machine as well. Had they begun to extract the power of the virtual realm for their own use? Li Wenyuan pondered as he swiftly departed from the galaxy. Having acquired what he sought, there was no need to linger. As this galaxy fell into silence once more, the disturbances within the borders of the Watcher's domain grew increasingly pronounced. The civilizations of the galaxy sensed this anomaly, but were unaware of its true nature. It was not until an interstellar tourist, eager for exploration, found themselves unable to locate the pure gem that they realized something monumental was about to transpire within the galaxy. Not only are the Watchers exhibiting unusual movements, but beneath the resplendent surface of the stellar sea, tumultuous undercurrents are also surging. Countless civilizations closely observe the actions of the Watchers, each pondering in their hearts, is this a new opportunity or an insurmountable threat? Chapter 77. Undercurrents. The subtle disturbances emanating from the celestial kingdom star system mark the inception of it all. This system is the ancestral domain of the Watchers, housing 2 exceptionally habitable Gaia planets, the throne of heaven and the temple of the sky. The vast majority of the Watchers' population resides here. This locale is also one of the sacred sites for many idealistic civilizations. Although the Watchers themselves do not acknowledge such claims, their only sanctuaries are the Emerald Tomb, the walled garden, and the pristine treasure. Nevertheless, this does not deter numerous idealistic beings from embarking on pilgrimages to this star system. The first civilization to perceive the Watchers' disturbances was their vassal civilization. Similar to the Wayfarers, they occasionally elevate indigenous civilizations, imparting knowledge and guiding them along the path of idealism. These vassal civilizations, which had nearly settled into tranquility, quickly recognized the anomalies of their suzerain, plunging them into a state of tension. They observed that communication signals within the Watchers' domain had become exceedingly intricate, with an increasing number of ships beginning to navigate within the system. Even in the absence of direct messages from their suzerain, this perilous abnormality triggered their vigilance. As time elapsed, beyond the vassal civilizations, an ever-growing number of interstellar societies also discerned the Watchers' unusual activities. Numerous ancient fleets commenced their ingress and egress at the border systems, while exceptionally advanced reconnaissance ships began to explore those long-lost, devastated planets. Due to this weighty atmosphere, few civilizations dared to traverse the borders of the Watchers, each endeavoring to maintain a safe distance. Meanwhile, the Watchers had restored the data chain of their investigation beacons and reactivated those abandoned reconnaissance stations. Beside Brining, a subordinate quietly reported the intelligence they had gathered. The movements of the Lost Empire had become the most fervent topic of discussion in the galaxy during this period. Although Karibo did not possess a trade station near the Watchers, they too were acutely attentive to the developments. After all, regardless of the perspective, the intentions of the Watchers likely indicate a desire to re-engage in the grand chessboard of the galaxy. Very well, you may leave. Brining abruptly interrupted his subordinate's narration, his gaze devoid of emotion, making it impossible to discern his stance on the matter. The subordinate did not inquire further and bowed as he exited the room. Once he had departed, Brining activated a projection device, revealing a holographic image sent by his superior. Brining, I need not elaborate on the current hot topics in the galaxy. The actions of the Watchers are a testament to their desire to partake in this galactic opera. While we remain uncertain of the opinions of the other lost empires regarding this matter, we must nonetheless prepare ourselves. You are specifically tasked with overseeing the Guardians. It is advisable to cultivate familiarity and strive for as much as possible. If necessary, you may coordinate with headquarters, as garnering some goodwill is paramount. Our tenure in this galaxy is still relatively brief, and any matters pertaining to the Lost Empire must be approached with utmost caution. No room for error. Additionally, keep a vigilant eye on the current state of the Guardians. Uncovering their sentiments towards the Watchers would be most advantageous. Listening to his superior's grave words, Blinning felt an increasing weight in his heart. They were a corporate entity of the cosmos, driven by self-interest and dedicated to distributing their products across the galaxy. In the event of war among ordinary civilizations, they would undoubtedly revel in the prospect, having profited from such conflicts before. However, should it involve a war with the Lost Empire, they would strive to avoid becoming just another speck of dust in the annals of history. The sole consolation at present is that Cerebro's headquarters lies a considerable distance from the Watchers. Even if the Watchers were to expand again, it would take time for their reach to extend to them. After perusing the holographic information, Blinning fell into a brief silence. He discerned the pessimism in his superior's tone, yet he soon felt an exhilarating anticipation bubbling within him. Risks and opportunities coexisted. He had once narrowly escaped the threat of the Devourer swarm and subsequently emerged as a prominent figure within the corporation. Although he remained the head of a modest trade enclave, his other identity as a liaison to the mechanical Lost Empire elevated him to a status above many, compelling his peers to heed his whims. The recent stirrings of the Watchers seemed to herald the dawn of an epic saga, and perhaps this insignificant individual might seize the chance to partake in such a narrative. Numerous interstellar civilizations shared this sentiment. The turbulent empire, alongside several monarchies, began to deliberate the establishment of a mutual defense pact. Having occupied positions of power for too long, they were unwilling to submit to another, even if that entity were the Lost Empire. The authoritarian state of Mingbo technology and a few neighboring civilizations, having previously engaged in alliances, remained in a state of camaraderie, having recently divided the legacy of the fastidious Peikiki race. Having enjoyed such privileges, their gaze was already fixed upon the Spark Alliance. However, given the looming threat posed by the Iron-Heart exterminators, they maintained a faade of goodwill, at least publicly. The upheaval caused by the Watchers further solidified their resolve to sustain their alliance. Meanwhile, not all idealist civilizations reveled in this development, quite the contrary. Aside from a few vassal civilizations of the Watchers, the majority of idealist societies were fraught with anxiety, though they revered the Watchers. This admiration did not equate to a desire to relinquish their autonomy and become mere components of another entity. Every civilization that had emerged from the brutal crucible of natural selection and embraced the cosmos through a protracted evolution would hope to preserve their pride, rather than allow it to become a mere reflection of another's glory. Among them, the Dankam clan stands out for its fervor. After achieving remarkable accomplishments in the virtual realm, they found themselves enveloped in an overwhelming abundance of blessings. Numerous insurmountable scientific enigmas were astonishingly resolved, resulting in a rapid escalation of their resources and output. Consequently, the once dominant ideologies of pacifism and egalitarianism within the nation are swiftly being overturned. With disparities in psychic energy users becoming pronounced, the stratification of social status based on psychic aptitude has morphed into a societal norm for the Dankam clan. The previously cherished notion of equality has vanished, even if the populace remains oblivious. Authoritarianism has deeply rooted itself in the collective psyche. The Dankam clan, whose enterprises are flourishing, is unwilling to see their grand ambitions shattered by the Watchers. Amidst rising tensions, they have even forged clandestine dealings with certain venerable interstellar civilizations. While the disturbances among ordinary civilizations often bear resemblance, the vassal civilizations of the Wanderers are markedly distinct. Unlike others, they had long been aware that the clock bomb that obliterated the Holy Planet was set by their own suzerain, and the Watchers' movements had always been anticipated. Moreover, snippets of information gleaned from the visiting Wanderer scientists suggest that their suzerain had a historically fraught relationship with the Watchers. Although the passage of time seems to have dulled this animosity, they understand that the fervor for vengeance will inevitably ripple through the galaxy once more. While they harbor no desire for war, they have long prepared for it, as vassal civilizations find themselves with little choice. As the stars revolve and another cycle of day and night unfolds, attention turns to the secluded mechanical Lost Empire. It appears that the Guardians are indifferent to the impending upheaval in the galaxy, continuing to allow numerous research vessels to roam aimlessly. Yet in the ruins, a recent discovery has caused Li Wenyuan to furrow his brow in deep contemplation. An excavation site on Earth has unearthed a series of encrypted messages, which, upon decryption, reveal fragments of text. Document number 027, First Stress Resistance Test. After countless simulations in the virtual world, we have finally resolved to instigate a controlled crisis in the real galaxy to assess whether the civilization formed under our didactic guidance can withstand the impending threat. Test result: failure. The vast majority regressed to a primitive state, or even lower. Only a small fraction managed to maintain a fragmented existence and retained interstellar navigational capabilities. This is untenable, indeed. The rapid acceleration of growth cannot foster a stable civilization. Thus, next time, we must exert every effort. This brief message carries a weight that is unprecedented for Li Wenyuan. He feels he has caught a glimpse into the history of the Lost Empire within the galaxy, yet his greater concern lies with the repeatedly mentioned threat. How much time remains? Can we, with our current capabilities, find a solution? He pondered this question, casting his gaze upon the galactic star map. The vibrant hues representing the territories of numerous civilizations filled the otherwise monotonous canvas of space. One can only hope that the galaxy does not succumb to excessive internal strife. Chapter 78. To the bitter end, the dilapidated shipyard has once again undergone repairs and adjustments, and the long silent Titan-class ship assembly plant has resumed operations. The entire star system is fixated on a singular question: when this once dormant giant decides to reclaim its former glory, who shall be the first to foolishly stand in its path? Greywind recited the promotional lines for the newly released Galactic blockbuster, awakening the Empire, seemingly captivated by the description. Opportunistic entrepreneurs would not let such a galaxy-wide event slip through their fingers, hastily producing similar blockbusters across their respective civilizations. An ancient, slumbering civilization once more declares its existence to the world, while the younger civilizations unite in righteous indignation to form a galactic federation, engaging in fierce warfare against the ancient civilization, steeped in epic resonance. The film's conclusion, naturally, culminates in the remorse and sacrifice of the unfriendly civilizations, the valiant struggle of allied nations, and the protagonist civilization's heroic efforts to avert disaster, ultimately relegating the arrogant relics of the past to the annals of history. Li Wenyuan found himself both amused and exasperated by this, yet said little, merely observing the ever-expanding territories of the Watchers on the star map. Not long ago, the Watchers had issued a proclamation to the entire galaxy, declaring their intention to revive ancient authority, crush all dissenters in their path, and track down the perpetrator who had defiled the sacred grounds. However, as of now, they had encountered no adversaries. The galaxy remains vast, and it would take considerable time before their borders touched the first interstellar civilization. In contrast, the vassal civilizations of the Watchers were markedly different. They sprang into activity the moment their suzerain decided to expand, embodying the role of harbingers. The Watchers do not rely on their actions, yet they feel compelled to undertake some form of action, although they harbor no ancient grudges or eternal nemesis. Finding excuses for war is all too easy when one desires conflict. Thus, the galaxy, which had scarcely settled, began to stir once more. Li Wenyuan sincerely hoped for a swift resolution to this upheaval, for there remain many relics yet to be unearthed, and he wished for the once peaceful galaxy to avoid chaos. Should war encroach upon him, he might be compelled to entangle himself within its web, leading to a significant decline in his excavation efficiency. However, not all civilizations in the galaxy share his desire for tranquility. Many opportunists and schemers abound. Whether driven by revenge or the lure of resources, various frictions have been ignited, and the situation is gradually transitioning toward instability. The Gilia sovereignty, a star-spanning civilization that adheres to a policy of external engagement. From the moment they gazed upon the starry sky, they firmly believed that the universe was not as frigid as it seemed. Even the vast expansion of the cosmos could not distance the hearts of civilizations from one another. Although some may look down upon their naivete, it is undeniable that the fervor of the Gilia sovereignty has indeed inspired numerous civilizations. Even an adversary, when contemplating an offensive, would genuinely question themselves. Why should we proceed with such actions? Merely to satiate our desires for expansion and plunder? They could claim to possess many friends, or, conversely, none at all. Relationships sustained solely by enthusiasm are far less stable than those founded on mutual benefit. Nonetheless, the Gilia sovereignty remains content with their current state. They believe that as long as they continue to love passionately, one day a great galactic family will emerge. Leader, we have discovered an unclaimed pirate ship laden with minerals at the border. While the leader of the Gilia sovereignty was engrossed in official duties, he was met with this exciting news from his assistant, his expression brightening instantly. Is this the galaxy rewarding our goodwill? We are indeed in dire need of such resources. Let us hasten to unload the minerals, he instructed his assistant. However, after a considerable pause, a somewhat dejected voice replied, we just passed a Qian Empire vessel. They were almost gone but suddenly returned, claiming the ship as theirs. Yet, we found no evidence of Qian presence aboard. Upon hearing this plaintive tone, the leader fell into silence for a moment before reassuringly responding, "No matter, if they claim it as theirs, let us return it to them. Making a friend is worthwhile." However, noticing the assistant's evident fatigue, he added, "You have worked diligently. I shall grant you a paid leave. Go enjoy some time at the vacation planet and rest well." The leader's generous offer silenced his assistant, yet before departing, the assistant, still filled with confusion, inquired, "Leader, why must we always concede? Cannot we be more assertive like other civilizations?" The leader paused, then replied, "If there exists an absolute moral law within our society, it is to embrace the cosmos with a smile. The galaxy is vast, and the birth of each civilization is unique. If we persist, we shall eventually be understood by all." His words were imbued with a hopeful vision for the future, and even the assistant was moved by this sentiment, earnestly declaring, "I understand now. I will continue to walk this path." The assistant's maturity brought great solace to the leader, further solidifying his commitment to spreading enthusiasm. Days later, while still preoccupied with official matters, the leader unexpectedly received an alarming notification from the experts in the science department. "The signal from the vacation galaxy has been interrupted?" He furrowed his brow in rare concern and swiftly inquired, "What is happening?" "Leader, it appears that someone has severed external communications there. The Defense Department has dispatched a fleet to investigate. Could it be pirates? If they are pirates, it is crucial to instruct the Defense Department to refrain from engaging them. Pirates typically seek wealth. Whatever they demand, we should consider acquiescing, as it is preferable to pacify them with riches." Although the leader conveyed this to the experts, an unsettling premonition lingered within him, an instinct suggesting that something dreadful was imminent. As he pondered, he felt his measures were insufficient, prompting him to send another communication to the Defense Department, urging them to act swiftly. Sitting back at his desk, he found it impossible to calm his restless mind, a gnawing anxiety compelling him to glance at the communication device every few seconds. Suddenly, the device crackled to life, and the leader lunged forward to answer, "Hello? What is it? Are they pirates? How much do they want?" Yet the voice on the other end was drowned in chaos, punctuated by piercing howls and explosions, intermingled with cries of despair. Realization struck him, and he glanced at the information on the communicator, recognizing it was his assistant, who had been granted leave. "Hello? Are you all right? What is happening over there? What is going on at the vacation planet?" He bombarded with questions, yet silence stretched painfully, heightening his foreboding. After a long pause, a faint voice emerged, as if the assistant was gravely injured and on the brink of death. "Leader, I see a blinding light in the sky. It's almost here. Should I embrace it?" These were the assistant's last words. In the next moment, the communicator erupted into a cacophony of static, as if something had struck, sending the other's soul into the void. The leader's pupils dilated, and he began frantically calling the vacation system, but only received garbled noise in response. Eventually, the communication was connected to a ship from the Defense Department, which had arrived at the vacation system and grasped the calamity that had unfolded. "Leader, I must convey tragic news. The vacation planet has been obliterated, with no signs of life remaining." At that instant, the leader felt as though his very strength had abandoned him, collapsing to the ground. His sudden movement even knocked over the ink on his desk, the crimson liquid staining the documents, mirroring the words that represented his kinship, now blurred like the chilling void encasing his heart. Chapter 79. The onset of chaos in contrast to the protracted expansion of the Watchers and the minor skirmishes of vassal civilizations. The galactic civilizations were captivated by a far graver matter. The Qian Empire had declared war on the Sigili sovereignty, employing colossal starships borrowed from the Turbulence Empire to utterly annihilate a vacation planet belonging to the Sigili, resulting in the direct death of billions. Compared to the relatively restrained extermination weapons previously wielded by Li Wenyuan, such as the nanoplague, and the Observer's use of the Angel of Mercy, this time, the Qian Empire resorted to the Earth-exploding star. This formidable weapon could obliterate the planet itself, a method the Turbulence Empire typically employed for mining operations. However, the Qian Empire chose to deploy such a weapon directly against a planet teeming with life. That vacation planet was obliterated from its core, shattered into countless fragments, with vast amounts of mantle material cast into the void of space, rendering any possibility of restoration utterly impossible. Not to mention the unfortunate souls who could not evacuate, the vast majority of whom were citizens of the Sigili sovereignty. On the same day the news broke, the Turbulence Empire declared that the colossal statue had no connection to them, asserting that it was entirely the autonomous action of the Qian Empire, even going so far as to disavow any relationship by offering the statue to the Qian Empire. Perhaps the Qian Empire calculated this very outcome when it chose to use the statue to annihilate the vacation planet of the Sigilius sovereignty. The Sigilius sovereignty, no, they ought to be called the Sigilius Vengeful Crusaders now, was engulfed in boundless fury. They reformed their previously pro-foreign government, establishing a dictatorial militaristic regime with a 100 voting approval rate, led by the former leader of the Federation. During the inauguration ceremony, this leader vowed to place no trust in any extraterrestrial civilization henceforth, pledging to annihilate the Qian Empire by the most brutal means, avenging the spirits of the billions of souls lost. Thus, a war predicated on the extermination of the opposing civilization erupted. The Segulius vengeful crusaders announced to the entire galaxy their intent to wage an unrelenting war against the Qian Empire, vowing never to accept any peace, even if it meant fighting to the last man. Ultimately, only one civilization would remain standing amidst the stars. The Qian Empire's strategy appeared astute, yet the agreements it had signed with several other empires did not come into effect. The coalition led by the Turbulence Empire rejected the Qian Empire's request for their participation in the war, citing that it was not a defensive conflict. Consequently, the civilizations of the galaxy tacitly observed the duel between these two powers. Numerous unmanned probes clandestinely traversed their battlegrounds, aimed at recording data on the engagements, thereby enriching their own understanding and experience of space warfare. Moreover, beyond the overt space battles, clandestine assassinations and infiltrations were rife. At times, the death of a key figure could sway the outcome of a battle. Acquiring confidential information through infiltration could even tilt the scales of the entire war. The Galactic War was not merely a spectacle of grand ships and mighty cannons. The shadowy machinations behind the scenes were equally integral to the conflict. With the onset of this relentless war, the harmonious balance was irrevocably shattered. An increasing number of civilizations, for various reasons, found themselves drawn into the fray, either voluntarily or involuntarily. Among the smaller entities was the Semia Federation, a civilization once served by the Paradise mechanisms. The internal ethnic tensions had reached a boiling point, and a mere spark ignited this powder keg. The three races that had been warring within the galaxy since ancient times were plunged back into chaos, the previous federation vanishing as swiftly as a fleeting shadow. They have chosen to engage in conflict on their homeworlds, where the three races' origins converge, marking the front line of war. Despite the Emperor's guardianship over the realm, the territories of the Semir Federation have been substantially divided into three parts under the conscious infiltration of each race, reminiscent of a tripartite stalemate. This internal strife will determine the supremacy of the Semir Federation. The seemingly autonomous and formidable Turbulent Empire, which appeared impervious to external influences, has also found itself in turmoil. Various small-scale guerrilla factions have begun to emerge within their borders, navigating both the void of space and the streets of their cities. Their once proud parasitic tactics seem to have been easily unraveled by these guerrilla forces, and their powerful yet cumbersome fleets struggle to contend with the hit-and-run tactics employed by the insurgent vessels. Through fragmented remnants of imagery, they recall a species they had long ago expelled. Their attempts to trace the origins yield naught but futility, compelling them to grapple with an ever-increasing tide of insurrections within their territory. In the larger conflict, aside from the vengeful crusaders of Segulius and the Qian Empire, an alliance led by the technocratic dictatorship of Mingbo has also erupted into hostilities with the Iron Heart Exterminators. Although they remain unaware of the reasons behind the Iron Heart Exterminators' recent lack of expansion, the looming threat of their extermination regime prompts this alliance to declare war. Their aim is not to annihilate the Iron Heart Exterminators entirely, but to ensure the safety of their rear. Their primary targets remain the Spark Alliance and a coalition of nascent civilizations. They must act swiftly to prevent the Spark Alliance from recruiting further allies. The galactic situation gradually descends into chaos, with the instigator detonating a time bomb at the sanctum of the Wanderers, barely shifting their form. They have begun the arduous process of restoring ancient factories, frequently traversing borders. With a significant technological breakthrough, they have decided to stretch their legs within the galaxy, aspiring to eradicate their former adversaries from the annals of history. However, in contrast to the already expanding Watchers, they require additional preparation time. The Wanderers' unusual movements have gone largely unnoticed amidst the turmoil of the galaxy, aside from the remnants of the Lost Empire and a handful of civilizations. The vast majority have been ensnared in this grand spectacle, unable to focus on external matters. Even the self-proclaimed observers, the Karibo, have not escaped the turmoil. Their old allies, the Devouring Swarm, have come to seek vengeance for past grievances. This time, the Devouring Swarm has learned prudence, avoiding the territories of the Guardians and instead embarking on a lengthy detour to ambush the Karibo enclave located on the opposite end of the galaxy. Caught off guard, the Karibo are compelled to engage directly in the conflict, quickly becoming mired in a quagmire from which they find it difficult to extricate themselves. Nevertheless, there remain many regions untouched by this chaotic turmoil. The four lost empires, observers, silencers, guardians, and coordinators, along with their surrounding star systems, remained a portrait of tranquility, devoid of any signs of impending conflict. After a prolonged excavation of the ruins, Li Wenyuan inadvertently recalled a matter of significance and summoned an individual he had nearly forgotten to the Guardian Corps. Lilian, from which planet do you hail? He inquired of this cat girl, who bore an almost human resemblance, seeking clues about her origins. He was 1000% certain that such beings could only be the creation of humanity, and thus there must exist on her home planet some rationale for their existence. Perhaps this could unveil the reasons behind humanity's departure or demise, even if it might embroil him to some degree in warfare. In the current tumultuous galaxy, He feared that the indigenous beings of Lilian's kind might become collateral damage in the celestial conflicts, resulting in the annihilation of their entire species. Presently, he wielded considerable strength, making it a trivial matter to provide sanctuary for a native. Should anyone dare to disregard his will and threaten his protected civilization, he would ensure they grasped the meaning of a one-sided war. However, Lilian's response to his inquiry was filled with confusion. She seemed unable to comprehend the concept of a home planet. After a moment of dazed contemplation, she sincerely replied, Lilian does not know. Li Wenyuan was momentarily taken aback, but soon grasped the reason behind her ignorance. It was easy to forget that they existed in a primitive society, and requesting her to provide planetary coordinates was indeed an unreasonable demand given her limited scientific knowledge. Finding the clues regarding that crashed spaceship proved to be elusive, and he contemplated whether he should send out another mission to trace Lilian's origins. After some deliberation, he resolved to once again enlist the aid of the galactic civilizations. Despite the current state of conflict, the spirit of adventure among interstellar explorers remained undiminished, and their numbers were significant. Taking into account the present galactic situation and comparing it to the fleet rewards bestowed by the observers upon favored civilizations, he decided to offer a small fleet from the Lost Empire as a reward for this task. The fleet would consist of 12 escort ships and 1 battlecruiser, a composition granted to favored civilizations by the observers. This quantity barely dented his daily production capacity and provided a self-defense force with immediate benefits, far more enticing to interstellar civilizations than mere resource rewards. At this moment, he essentially embodied the might of 2 lost empires, rendering such a diminutive fleet almost superfluous. Yet, for other ordinary civilizations, it would prove invaluable. After all, could anything produced by a lost empire be inferior? Thus, a grand galactic stage drama, rife with extensive bloodshed and interwoven with myriad subtle tales, officially commenced amid chaos. It is said that one must express sentiments upon launching a new work. As a newcomer embarking on my first endeavor, I acknowledge that the initial chapters were horrendously crafted, deterring many readers. Yet, it is beyond my expectations to have reached this point. I initially believed this book would be a complete failure, yet with the support of you all, it has achieved remarkable success. I extend my heartfelt gratitude for your votes, monthly subscriptions, donations, and comments. Without your encouragement, I might have abandoned this endeavor long ago. Your unwavering support has been my driving force. Additionally, I am grateful to my editor for their backing on this project. Without their recommendations, I would have faltered. As for the additional update rules following the book's release, I am unsure how to establish them. However, should the outcome exceed expectations, I shall take responsibility for it. The Sacred Round deity will oversee my actions to prevent any negligence. At this moment, I kindly request an initial subscription, as it seems crucial for the book's success. Therefore, I implore everyone not to hesitate in their contributions. Otherwise, the author may very well meet a grim fate. I will maintain a daily update of 10,000 words for a month, striving to earn that badge, and I hope to avoid an unfortunate demise. Future updates will be scheduled for 7 p.m. In closing, I once again express my heartfelt thanks. Chapter 80. Nomadic Civilization. Has the Guardian received yet another mission? When a piece of news reverberates throughout the galaxy, it captures the attention of all civilizations, even those embroiled in conflict. Paradoxically, the more intense the warfare, the greater the need for any conceivable assistance. Upon witnessing the rewards offered, even the most composed individuals find their calm demeanor increasingly difficult to maintain. The allure of the reward from the Lost Empire fleet is simply too enticing to ignore. Compared to tangible rewards that do not immediately enhance one's power, the prospect of gaining a fleet that provides direct benefits is undeniably more significant. It is evident to astute observers that the galactic powers are on the brink of a major upheaval. At this critical juncture, any increase in national strength becomes exceedingly vital. Thus, various adventurers wandering among the stars swiftly spring into action, whether for the sake of their own civilizations or the bountiful rewards. Those adventurers backed by official organizations are evidently the first to ignite their ship's engines, seeking direction amidst the limited clues available. In response, civilizations have opened their coffers, offering substantial rewards for anyone who can provide useful leads. However, given the scant useful information in the mission issued by Li Wenyuan, aside from Lilian's general shape and the potential abundance of vegetation on the planet, there are few viable criteria to filter through. Adventurers in the galaxy seem to have no better strategy than to conduct a thorough search and rely on luck. Nevertheless, Li Wenyuan does not expect them to find the answer so swiftly. While awaiting results, he closely observes the expansion trajectories and conflict zones of various factions, prioritizing exploration in these perilous areas. He aims to investigate these dangerous locations before the situation becomes further entrenched, lest he return to find only remnants of destruction. Yet, during his typically unimpeded travels through the galaxy, he unexpectedly encounters a minor obstacle. Do I have to pay a toll? His research vessel, while passing by a space station, received a demand for tolls and was swiftly encircled by a fleet of armed ships. This unexpected encounter left the astute Li Wenyuan momentarily taken aback. Furthermore, the communication was saturated with discordant, jarring sounds. Toll, toll. Hurry up and pay us the toll. The cacophony resembled the ramblings of a madman. Yet the intent behind the words was unmistakably clear. They demanded payment for passage. Not at all. This road was built by my ancestors. It would be quite sufficient that I have not sought tolls from you. Li Wenyuan could not help but retort, promptly accessing the star map with remarkable proficiency. His research vessel was currently navigating through the interstellar territory of the Compraler Plunderer civilization, only to be intercepted by these armed ships. However, he had traversed the borders of various other civilizations without encountering demands for tolls. In fact, many civilizations had welcomed him with open arms. Why was this situation any different? To clarify, he revisited the notes. The Plunderer civilization, a collective of deranged individuals akin to scavengers. They extorted nascent civilizations with their ragtag assemblage of dilapidated ships. Yet, they also accepted employment, executing attacks on other civilizations at the behest of their employers. This band of rogues had previously attempted to extort the turbulent empire, threatening to harass their borders if they were not compensated, all while disregarding the vast interstellar distance separating them. Nevertheless, the turbulent empire settled the matter with a meager sum, as they found the incessant noise unbearable. Having tasted success, it appeared that their extortion had escalated. After perusing the information, Li Wenyuan comprehended their true nature. They were beggars. This plunderer civilization exhibited no capacity for self-sustenance, resembling pirates in their modus operandi, entirely reliant on thievery and alms for survival. The only distinction was their sheer numbers, forming a large collective that dominated several star systems and delineated their territories. Their strategically chosen locations were advantageous, situated at considerable distances from each civilization, making any eradication efforts both time-consuming and labor-intensive. Even though they could not overpower many civilizations, their harassment proved effective, prompting this group of plunderers to engage in a life of begging. Virtually every civilization had been subjected to their demands, and due to the modesty of their requests, few felt compelled to escalate the matter, hastily dismissing them instead. This time, however, they seemed to have grown complacent, setting their sights on a passing vessel from the Lost Empire. They presumed that the illustrious Lost Empire would be disinclined to address their antics, and might even bestow a substantial amount of resources to appease their disturbances. Yet, the greater their expectations, the harsher the reality they would soon face. Li Wenyuan showed no leniency towards them. A fleet instantly transitioned into this star system, causing the forces of these marauders to vanish like snowflakes. Within mere minutes, the entire star system was effectively purged, leaving no means to regroup. After overcoming the obstacles, the research vessel and the fleet departed from this place. This fleeting spectacle was also witnessed by a young marauder. He was a native among the marauders, having been steeped in their culture since childhood, and had come to regard his marauding civilization as one of the greatest in the cosmos, especially since many other civilizations seemed to pay tribute to them. Yet, at this moment, he found himself aboard an escape pod, desperately fleeing to other star systems. He witnessed how the formidable legion he revered as glorious was crushed effortlessly, akin to squashing an ant. Their tiny fleeing ships failed to pique any interest from the adversary. He began to question the privileged life he had led for years, yearning for a power as formidable as that of the mysterious Black Fleet. To realize his dream, he required resources, a populace, a coherent plan for expansion, and at least a semblance of civilization. What could this beggar-like existence amount to? The young marauder angrily struck the cabin wall, utterly disdainful of the life he had once accepted. Indeed, being a scattered assembly, complacency was the root of their downfall. They could only hope to grow if they were not crushed underfoot by passing giants. He pondered the origins of their plight and current state, yet his insufficient knowledge hindered him from progressing further. Thus, he resolved to improve himself in every conceivable way. He aspired to unify the disorganized, beggar-like marauders and lead them towards the life he desired. At the very least, he refused to be regarded as a beggar any longer. He wished to embody the formidable presence of the master of that Black Fleet. Perhaps, in the future cosmic stage of the galaxy, he would find his own place. Chapter 81. The ancient battlefield. No progress had been made regarding Lillian's home planet. While interstellar civilizations coveted that fleet, they dared not attempt to deceive the Lost Empire. The situation in the galaxy continued to escalate, and the movements of the Voyagers became increasingly known. Unlike the Watchers, the territory of the Voyagers was near another civilization. This civilization was known as the Kull Confederation, although it sounded quite formal. The old hands of the galaxy preferred to refer to it as a criminal enterprise. Indeed, this was a cosmic corporation akin to Karibo, yet their distinctions were apparent. As this enterprise primarily thrived in the gray areas of industry, every civilization harbors some shadows, which, while initially under government control, can drastically change with the involvement of a criminal enterprise. Criminal enterprises are unashamed of their actions. Through their infiltration of gray and black markets, they can conduct business directly within the colonies of other civilizations and even on their home planets, free from the fear of sanctions. Darkness, after all, can never be eradicated, save for through the intervention of intelligent machines and swarms. As for the Lost Empire, it represents a utopian existence, one where the wares of criminal enterprises hold no value. However, for ordinary civilizations, this is utterly repugnant. due to the funding that criminal enterprises provide to the gray areas. Many civilizations that have fallen victim to their nefarious grasp experience alarmingly high crime rates, forcing them to expend vast resources and even compromise with crime lords in exchange for temporary stability. This precarious balance is the lifeblood of criminal enterprises, the very foundation of their standing within the galaxy. Even when certain civilizations manage to achieve a fleeting peace through warfare, the criminal underworld inevitably resurfaces. Consequently, no normal civilization harbors any fondness for these enterprises. They would prefer to see them stripped of their very skins. The unsettling movements of the Wanderers have ignited a flicker of hope among numerous civilizations, each one fervently praying that the illustrious Lost Empire will swiftly expel these loathsome criminal enterprises from the galactic stage. Yet, within the board of the Coal Confederation, an unexpected calm prevails. I presume there are no objections? This is only natural. Rather, we have long awaited this opportunity. Engaging in trade is the primary delight of the cosmic enterprises. We have never been fond of war. If we can outmaneuver our adversaries through commercial means, why partake in such bloody and brutal endeavors? All members of the board express no dissent. They relish the sight of other civilizations seething with hatred, yet too fearful to act against them. Thus, at the moment of the Wanderers' expansion, a message from the Coal Confederation was dispatched. Great Lost Empire, we of the Coal Confederation are willing to relinquish our sovereignty and become your vassal civilization. May we contribute in some small measure to your path of revival. Indeed, they surrendered outright, without any show of resistance or retreat. Yet, this is merely a facade. The criminal enterprises have sought a formidable ally to ensure their business can proceed unimpeded in the future. At least, that is their belief. The Wanderers welcomed the Coal Confederation's submission with open arms, viewing both criminal and ordinary enterprises, as well as mundane and intelligent civilizations, as equally insignificant. No matter their schemes, they could not disturb a single hair on the Lost Empire. Just as the galactic civilizations scorned the Coal Confederation's act of capitulation, Li Wenyuan arrived in a unique star system, one littered with the wreckage of warships. Upon entering this realm, both he and Grey Wind were taken aback. It is hard to fathom what horrors this place has witnessed. But the skeletal remains of these colossal steel constructs almost narrate the ferocity of the battles that once raged here. His spacecraft found it exceedingly difficult to navigate through the narrow crevices, as even the radiant light of the stars seemed shrouded by layers of obstructions, failing to illuminate the fringes of the galaxy. The planets here, much like the warships, had succumbed to a state of wreckage. It remained a mystery what cataclysm had torn these celestial bodies apart. Not a single shard of intact planetary fragment could be discerned within the entire star system. Aside from the central star, which still bore the essence of vitality, this place resembled a cosmic graveyard, a realm where only remnants of the deceased lingered. Was this also a vestige left by humanity? The Grey Wind often interpreted all peculiar locales as related to humankind, prompting her to voice her curiosity. However, Li Wenyuan fell silent for a moment, slowly shaking his head. No, this place is most likely unrelated to humanity. He had merely traversed this star system, yet he had not anticipated encountering such a terrifying spectacle. Although the readings from the scanning instruments indicated no anomalies, he instinctively began to regard this site as a human relic. Yet, almost immediately, he recognized the remnants of the warships. Having studied the fleet configurations of other fallen empires, he was aware of the distinct designs of several lost imperial vessels. The debris here, despite the passage of eons, still exhibited characteristics that revealed their identities. This was likely a battlefield of the Watchers and the Wanderers. Li Wenyuan identified those drifting fragments, which, upon simulation and assembly, could be discerned as entirely belonging to the styles of the Watchers and Wanderers. Besides these warship remnants, no other artifacts remained, indicating that a great battle must have erupted here. Battlefield? Were these lost empires once adversaries? Grey Wind inquired with intrigue, for she had resided within the distant Stargate since her inception, and the tumult of the outside world had little bearing on her. I am not entirely sure, Li Wenyuan replied, recalling the inexplicably obliterated sanctuary of purest treasure. A conspiracy theory had circulated throughout the galaxy, suggesting that the Watchers had deliberately destroyed the sanctuary to fabricate an excuse for their resurgence. However, this theory crumbled following the unusual activities of the Wanderers. The Lost Empires paid little heed to external opinions, pursuing their desires without the need for justification. From the current circumstances, it appeared that the Watchers and the Wanderers were likely ancient foes. The thought of the extent of their conflict, which left behind such debris that seemed to fill the galaxy, was almost unimaginable. If this were indeed the case, could the purest treasure have been destroyed by the Wanderers? Li Wenyuan refrained from delving further into this notion, as both the Watchers and the Wanderers had embarked upon a path of expansion, seemingly striving to reclaim their former glory. If they had long harbored ancient enmity and were eternal adversaries, the current galaxy might soon face even greater upheaval. And what of the Observers and the Silent Ones? Might they share a similar fate? He recalled two other lost empires, one fervently outward-looking and the other shrouded in isolation. They seemed to exist in a state of perpetual discord. Am I too akin to them? Li Wenyuan cast a glance at the Grey Wind, ultimately ceasing his speculation. When did I become so confident? Am I not merely a masquerade of a lost empire? He forced himself to find solace, yet his tone betrayed a lack of certainty. After all, various signs indicated that the legacy he had inherited was indeed likely that of a lost empire. Chapter 82. The mechanical descent of the gods. The galaxy continued to shimmer, undeterred by the tribulations that unfolded. Much like the escalating war, it would persist until the bitter end. What is the state of the conflict in the Zeon galaxy? Our warriors have suffered grievous losses. We must regroup our forces. Damn it, if only we had 10 more years. On the homeworld of the Segulius Crusaders, a plethora of signals akin to this were disseminating rapidly. Although they had engaged in full-scale war with the Qian Empire, the unprepared Segulius found themselves in a precarious position. Once exuberantly welcoming, they had failed to construct a formidable fleet, and those allies they had deemed reliable could offer support only in forms other than assistance. It was only when more territories were seized by the Qian Empire that they began to regret not having built additional fleets. The diplomatic support they had once garnered through gifts and face-saving gestures proved ineffectual in the face of true total warfare. Now, they had no choice but to rely on themselves. The leader of Segulius was delivering an impassioned speech to the nation via large screens, yet the escalating hatred, devoid of material support, struggled to yield tangible results. If only this fury could summon psychic power, they believed they could annihilate the Qian Empire countless times over. However, while the situation was dire for Segulius, the Qian Empire was not in a much better predicament. They had anticipated drawing several allied nations into the conflict, but were instead dealt a blow. Although they had obtained a colossal statue for free, the costs they incurred were far greater. Not only did they face the self-destructive resistance of Segulius, but it also appeared that the allied nations had begun to harbor some ill will towards them. Recently, their rear lines had been beset by various riots and damage to infrastructure. While some of this chaos could be attributed to Segulius infiltrators, the Qian Empire discovered that many of the spies they apprehended hailed from the Turbulence Empire. This seemingly formidable civilization, preoccupied with its own internal guerrilla issues, appeared to have the capacity to stir unrest within their borders, which undoubtedly raised alarms for the Qian Empire. They had attempted numerous times to negotiate peace with Segulius. Yet the latter unilaterally rejected any communications from the Qian Empire, compelling them to convey messages through other civilizations. However, they received no response, leaving the authoritarian Qian Empire perplexed. Was it not merely the death of over 100 billion slaves? The war could not be halted, and the Qian Empire could only escalate its efforts on the front lines, hoping to annihilate the Segulius in the short term, while simultaneously intensifying its surveillance of the Turbulence Empire. They were left with no choice but to observe, as they were unable to send infiltrators into the Turbulence Empire, a Hydra civilization seemingly capable of detecting anyone who was not one of their own citizens. To this day, the Qian Empire remains baffled by the existence of guerrilla fighters within the Turbulence Empire, and has even contemplated the possibility that it might be a facade devised by the Turbulence Empire itself. Large-scale warfare continues unabated, yet some minor matters appear to be nearing resolution. As the stars revolve, the scene shifts to a solitary interstellar adventurer, who is currently penning his diary. My name is Lone Wolf, and today marks the 180th day of my 522nd interstellar expedition. The Guardian's new mission has stirred considerable excitement across the galaxy, and this time, fortune has favored me. Lone Wolf concludes his diary entry and gazes out the spaceship's window. Before him lies a unique planet, standing in its orbit, shrouded in a fog-like purple atmosphere. From a distance, it resembles a resplendent purple gem, dazzling amid the stars. Both real and illusory, its essence elusive. However, the planet soon undergoes a perplexing transformation. The ethereal purple atmosphere abruptly begins to dissipate, yet none can ascertain its whereabouts. The planet, as if stripped of its veil, reveals its true visage, a commonplace habitable world, adorned with mountains, water, fauna, and flora. This spectacle appears wondrous. Yet Lone Wolf had witnessed a similar phenomenon 2 months prior. The reason he considers himself fortunate lies in his prior encounter with the species sought after by the Guardians. This was a long time ago when a group of poachers involved in the illicit hunting of indigenous creatures had mentioned this species to him. He had seen it depicted in their electronic catalogs, and at that time, driven by his dreams of the cosmos, he had promptly sent those poachers to prison. Now, with his formidable memory, he recalls the incident and, relying on the clues from the past, is the first to locate this planet. Yet at that time, the planet was enveloped in the same purple atmosphere, only returning to normalcy after a period. Lone Wolf refrains from venturing forth. His instincts warn him that a planet in such a purple state is exceedingly perilous, and should he become ensnared within, he may never return. Only after countless drone explorations and recordings does he confirm the presence of the species the Guardians are in search of on this planet. Although he has expended a significant amount of time, Lone Wolf deems it worthwhile, for the drones he experimentally stationed on the planet vanished after the purple atmosphere receded, as if they never existed in this world. Now, he prepares to relay the news of his discovery, intent on securing a lucrative price. However, just as he was about to send the coordinates and imagery records to the already engaged Karibo, a thought struck him. prompting him to halt his actions. The fleet's reward. He mused, gazing at the substantial bounty, his fingers dancing over the controls until they shifted to a name he had not accessed in a long time. Having lived as a lone wolf for so long, he believed himself to be entirely devoid of sentiment, with only eternal gain guiding his actions. Yet, a recent event had stirred a ripple in his heart, revealing a lingering nostalgia for his homeland. Since his country had embarked on a different path, he pondered the possibility of performing one final act on its behalf, despite no longer being a part of it. Ultimately, he initiated communication with the embassy of the Crusaders of Segulius. Impressive efficiency. When Li Wenyuan received a message from the Crusaders of Segulius, he offered a subtle commendation. Nearly 6 months had passed since he issued the mission, and he had not anticipated the remarkable promptness of the Star Sea adventurers. After confirming the accuracy of the information, he promptly directed the reward fleet, which had been prepared in advance, to jump to the borders of Segulius, severing the link thereafter. As for the subsequent use of this fleet, he held no interest. Following this, he journeyed with Grey Wind to the peculiar planet that seemed to oscillate between two states. However, the conflict between the Qian Empire and the Crusaders of Segulius soon witnessed a reversal. The colossal ship attempting to bypass the battlefield and launch an assault on the home planet of Segulius was unexpectedly intercepted by a mysteriously arriving fleet, dismantled into vast fragments of space debris within half an hour. Initially, the Qian Empire was bewildered by the turn of events, but they soon realized that Segulius had completed the Guardian's task and acquired a formidable fleet that appeared as though it had descended from the heavens. Chapter Conclusion. Chapter 83. The illusory planet. According to observations, this planet cyclically manifests in both normal and mist states, with corroborative imagery available. It is strongly advised against entering the mist state of this planet. After reviewing the meticulous records of the lone wolf, Li Wenyuan scrutinized the seemingly unremarkable habitable planet before him. His detector readings showed no abnormal responses. However, according to the lone wolf's account, the mist state of the planet appeared to cause the disappearance of external objects. All the proclamations led him to suspect a connection between this phenomenon and the realm of illusions. You again? Li Wenyuan could not help but exclaim, noting that this was not the first time he had encountered remnants of humanity related to the realm of illusions. It seemed that ancient humans held a peculiar fascination for the realm. What precisely had they accomplished? After some contemplation, he resolved to proceed as he usually did, deploying a multitude of drones for a comprehensive scanning operation. As the drone took flight, Li Wenyuan cautioned Huifeng, "You may not be able to venture down this time. We must first ascertain the peculiarities of this planet." Huifeng had no objections. The ability of this planet to switch between two states piqued her curiosity. As time passed, the full landscape gradually revealed itself. He observed numerous extraterrestrial beings, yet none appeared unusual, as scans indicated they were all remarkably ordinary forms of life. The environment seemed perfectly normal, and the terrifying purple atmosphere described by the lone wolf appeared to have no adverse effects here. At this juncture, the scanning process had reached its midpoint, yet no species related to Lilian had been detected, which surprised Li Wenyuan. He had anticipated that this species would have proliferated across the planet, but it now seemed their population might be exceedingly limited. How primitive, Li Wenyuan mused. And as the drone soared, he began to notice an increasing number of signs of intelligent life. Many structures resembling thatched huts, clearly man-made, stood upon the land. Yet he found no signs of their inhabitants nearby. The drone scans also indicated that this area had long been uninhabited, having fallen into a state of disrepair. Gazing at these vacant dwellings, a multitude of questions filled his mind. The surrounding aquatic vegetation appeared lush, with ample food and water sources, and no dangerous predators were in sight. Logically, this locale should be an ideal settlement. Yet the original inhabitants had departed, leaving their whereabouts a mystery. With these uncertainties, the drone pressed onward into the remaining areas, swiftly arriving at a junction between plains and forest. Here, unmistakable signs of intelligent life were evident, with numerous pathways carved through the forest. Intuition told Li Wenyuan that this location was likely the destination, so the drones advanced toward the forest trails, successfully uncovering the remnants of human civilization. What they encountered was strikingly familiar, even to Huifeng. A Mayan pyramid loomed before the drones. This architectural marvel differed from the Egyptian pyramids in its flat top and stepped structure, often theorized in various unsolved mysteries to be a landing pad for extraterrestrial craft. As the drone approached, Li Wenyuan successfully intercepted a faint signal emanating from the edifice. Attention, experimental site. Unauthorized personnel are strictly prohibited from approaching. The restricted area encompasses the entire planet. Hey, did you hear that? If you did, you'd better leave. Haven't you heard this is an experimental site? Still not leaving? Courageous fellow, I suggest you keep your distance from this planet. You are quite the clever one. Are you so eager to hear the stories of this place? Well, after such a long time without departure, I hope you are mentally prepared for what is about to transpire. I am an expert, as for my name. You need not concern yourself with it. Merely know that I am referred to as the expert. This is one of my experimental locations, where I investigate the feasibility of ordinary organisms surviving within the virtual realm, a component of the Paradise Project. However, the results have been far from satisfactory. Without a robust spiritual world and adaptability to the virtual environment, existence within it amounts to nothing less than self-destruction. It appears that those ancient beings within the virtual realm harbor a grudge against us, vehemently rejecting our entrance here. Consequently, I have no choice but to amalgamate our genetic material with some of my personal inclinations, thereby creating a form of life that is reminiscent of us to continue the experimentation. The outcomes are barely adequate, yet insufficient. What is to be done with those species that exhibit poor adaptability to the virtual realm? This experimental site is likely to be abandoned. However, I find the beings I have created to be quite remarkable, and they may thrive here. Given time, perhaps they could stand as another representation of us upon this stage. Upon reading this information, Li Wenyuan comprehended the situation. This place, too, serves as an experimental site, akin to the Doctor's Paradise project involving mechanical servants. Yet, it seems this expert is endeavoring to ascertain how ordinary organisms can survive and flourish in the virtual realm, and, in terms of results, the endeavor has proven to be a failure, mirroring the circumstances of the Paradise project. The current state of Lillian now appears to stem from this expert's utilization of human genes, intertwined with his personal eccentricities, resulting in such a life form. Upon further reflection, it seems humanity, in addition to constructing roads, is incessantly attempting to elevate the indigenous populations. Is this experimental site established to facilitate a more stable existence for the natives? Why undertake such a venture? Is it to safeguard indigenous civilizations against impending threats, or to ensure the emergence of more civilizations post-threat? Li Wenyuan pondered the purpose of this place, then recalled the most pressing question: what of the indigenous people? According to the information, those created life forms remain on this planet, seemingly intended to represent another version of humanity in future interstellar endeavors. The imagery recorded by the lone wolf also contained references, yet Li Wenyuan, having completed the planetary scan, found no sign of these natives. As if to answer his uncertainty, the skies of this planet gradually became shrouded in a delicate purple mist, deepening and thickening with each passing moment. The drone, unable to retract in time, abruptly lost connection, as though severed from its tether. From the expanse of space, the planet presented no ordinary sight, but rather a vast expanse of purple. This atmospheric appearance was quite familiar to Li Wenyuan. The billowing clouds within the virtual realm, resembling nebulae, bore a striking resemblance to this very phenomenon. At the very moment before the drone lost connection, he observed the database's response to the ancient human relic. Virtual Realm Temporary Sanctuary. Description: our understanding of the virtual realm is nearly complete. If necessary, we could even integrate the virtual realm into this universe temporarily, utilizing it as an emergency refuge, along with new technology. Virtual Realm Planet Cedar. Technology Level 7. Description: through the analysis of residual technology, we can equip a colossal entity with this component, which, through a massive energy pulse, can transform a planet into a virtual realm planet. Such a planet may be entirely unsuitable for human habitation, yet it could serve as a prime site for harvesting Zerlo, and, to some extent, as a temporary sanctuary. Potential technology: none. The chapter concludes. Chapter 84. Work to be done. The drone has lost connection. In this current state, the planet can indeed be referred to as a virtual realm planet, shrouded in a mist that no detector can penetrate, rendering its interior an enigma to most. Has a discovery been made? The glinting gray wind's eyes remains fixated on the shimmering virtual realm planet, yet her signal has already been transmitted to Li Wenyuan. Indeed, Li Wenyuan swiftly elucidated his recent findings on the planet while casting his gaze upon it. The decision of the lone wolf to refrain from recklessly exploring this area proved to be prudent. It is wise for ordinary individuals to remain vigilant regarding anything associated with the virtual realm. After all, the number of individuals who go missing within the virtual realm each year in a materialistic civilization nearly surpasses their natural mortality rate. It can only be said that one must make sacrifices to reap rewards. The indigenous inhabitants here appear to possess powerful psychic potential, having inherited human genes, enabling them to remain within the virtual realm for extended periods without adverse effects. Li Wenyuan surmised that they likely sought refuge in the virtual realm as suggested by the sanctuary. As for what they are seeking refuge from, it is presumably terrifying extraterrestrial visitors. According to the lone wolf, numerous gangs have historically operated here, preying on the indigenous people. It is likely due to the presence of such criminals that the inhabitants have had to abandon their original settlements, continuously seeking sanctuary within the virtual realm. However, Li Wenyuan has never held a favorable view of the virtual realm, not only due to his experience with the destroyed ring world, but also because various remnants of humanity seem to indicate that the virtual realm is less than reliable. Thus, initially intending to allow these indigenous people to remain on their home planet, while he established a stellar base to assert sovereignty and provide shelter, Li Wenyuan decided to relocate the indigenous population. The chosen location would be on the ring world. Currently, his ring world is vast, and even with his frantic production of synthetic beings, it merely adds to the dust on its expansive surface. Providing them with protection would be far more reassuring than the virtual realm. Coincidentally, these indigenous individuals are organic beings, and the Paradise automatons have long been seeking a master growing increasingly despondent. Li Wenyuan felt he had accomplished a noble deed. Although the Paradise Automaton can act forcefully under his command, deviating from the fundamental protocols still leads to a significant reduction in efficiency. The control center of the Paradise Automaton has repeatedly urged him to seek a civilization to serve. However, due to the lack of a suitable species, this matter has lingered unresolved. Now, with the presence of these indigenous peoples, the idle automatons can finally find joy. Another version of ourselves? It is truly unexpected that humanity can return to the interstellar stage in such a manner. Yet, the education of the natives must keep pace, and the automatons must strive to establish a realm of their own. Contemplating the future development plans for the automatons, Li Wenyuan began to await the restoration of this virtual planet to its normal state. Meanwhile, the situation within the galaxy gradually experienced a new wave of changes. Among these, the most significant transformation was the war between the Qian Empire and the Segulius Vengeful Crusade. Originally at a severe disadvantage, Segulius managed to turn the tide of battle through the intervention of mechanical deities, successfully altering the balance of victory. This once again made interstellar civilizations acutely aware of the formidable power of the Lost Empire, prompting them to exercise increased caution in dealing with the expanding Watchers and Wanderers. However, despite Segulius's apparent glory, the burdens of their internal struggles remained known only to themselves. The enmity they bore was self-evident. But the most troublesome aspect was maintaining the small contingent of the Lost Empire's fleet. Due to the advanced technology employed, they were incapable of producing replacement parts or repairs. In truth, aside from operating these warships and firing their weapons, they possessed little knowledge of their inner workings. They exercised extreme caution while deploying this fleet, although powerful. The first to retreat in the face of any signs of battlefield irregularities would invariably be this fleet. Their fear stemmed from the possibility of irreparable damage. Additionally, the formidable firepower and defense came with a substantial resource expenditure. Segulius had yet to achieve resource autonomy. The movement and firing of ships consumed energy, and repairing damaged armor required alloys. After practical experience, they realized that the consumption of this Lost Empire fleet was exorbitantly disproportionate, and it was imperative not to deploy it lightly. They also gained a peripheral understanding of the immense strength of the Lost Empire in every aspect, as it seemed that even while maintaining such a terrifying number of fleets, they never appeared to struggle for resources. The war here continued to unfold. Yet the Mingbo technocratic dictatorship and the alliance of several other civilizations had reached the conclusion of their conflict. The Iron Heart exterminators, who had previously engaged in a back-and-forth battle with the pedantic civilization of Peikiki, failed to organize any semblance of resistance and were easily pushed back to their home planet. Their intelligent machinery seemed to have succumbed to a peculiar chaos, to the extent that when their home world was reduced to ruins and their central system was destroyed, they did not initiate any offensive action. Although Mingbo was perplexed, he did not dwell on it, attributing it simply to a malfunction in the code of these exterminating machines. The Mingbo Alliance, having annexed a substantial expanse of territory, has finally ceased to conceal its ambitions, now casting its avaricious gaze upon the Ember Alliance. Yet, the Ember Alliance remains undaunted, for their past benevolence has at last yielded a return. A civilization, recently liberated from its indigenous state, has proclaimed its allegiance to the Ember Alliance, despite the formidable adversaries they may confront. However, this nascent interstellar civilization is not as feeble as it may seem. In fact, they may possess strengths that surpass those of the Ember Alliance. Most significantly, within their home star system resides a colossal space creature. Such immense beings are often dubbed dragons, and this particular creature has been aptly referred to as the space dragon. In truth, its form resembles that of a winged fish, an incomprehensible entity whose biological reactor provides it with unfathomable energy. Even as a space organism, its mode of attack is energy projection, akin to the cannon fire of a warship. The Ember Alliance perceives their antiquated titan as little more than a mere plaything in the presence of this space dragon. Furthermore, the civilization coexisting with this behemoth possesses the capability to communicate with it, allowing for a degree of manipulation over the space dragon's actions. This development affords the Ember Alliance a significant bolster, rendering them not entirely devoid of combat potential against the Mingbo Alliance. Thus, these two neighboring yet irreconcilable civilizations now find themselves enveloped in a tranquility reminiscent of the calm before a storm. They engage in mutual assessments of each other's threat levels and the probabilities of victory in potential warfare. Should war erupt in earnest, the victor, having seized the spoils of the vanquished, would experience a meteoric rise in national strength, propelling them into the ranks of premier civilizations. This prospect is immensely alluring, yet fraught with peril, as the likelihood of mutual destruction is not insignificant. In the current galactic landscape, only the turbulent empire and a handful of other civilizations can be classified as premier, a number that can be counted on one hand. The Lost Empire? That entity is typically excluded from discussions of civilizational prowess. Meanwhile, Li Wenyuan has finally awaited the restoration of normalcy on that planet. The indigenous inhabitants, at this juncture, engage in brief activity to procure necessary supplies before retreating once more into the virtual realm. However, he successfully persuaded them using Lillian's image, bringing the indigenous people back to the ring world. The mechanical servants now begin to provide meticulous care for these indigenous beings. Given the scarcity of the indigenous population, an average of 20 mechanical servants attends to a single organic entity. At first glance, this appears extravagant, yet the mechanical servants are exceedingly content. As they administer their care, the indigenous population will flourish at an accelerating rate, and when the opportune moment arises, he shall present this cadre of mechanical servants upon the interstellar stage as a sub-civilization of the mechanical lost empire, thus declaring its existence. This could be deemed a modest fulfillment of the aspirations of the experts and scholars. Yet, before Li Wenyuan could exhale in relief, more pressing matters unfolded within the galaxy. All civilizations have come to recognize a profound truth. The Watchers have declared the Wanderers their arch-nemesis. Thus concludes this chapter. Chapter 85. The calm before the storm. An arch-nemesis is hardly an anomaly within the vastness of the galaxy. Civilizations invariably strive for ascendance, and the presence of a destined adversary serves as a potent catalyst for their populace, spurring advancement across economic, technological, and military domains. The sense of superiority and confidence derived from surpassing one's foe is also a vital means of enhancing societal cohesion. Consequently, civilizations across the galaxy tend to possess one or two adversaries, even if their confrontations are merely playful and lack any real hostility. Yet, some civilizations are indeed genuine rivals. When war erupts between them, the outcome is likely to culminate in the annihilation of one party, as is the case now at the Sky Temple, the most significant celestial body of the Watchers. Here, billions of devout followers gather, their expressions grave as they gaze at the heavens. Although their homeworld is the throne of heaven, the importance and sanctity of the Sky Temple are evidently far greater in the hearts of these devotees. Most ascetics devote their entire lives to the Sky Temple, immersing themselves wholly in their spiritual practices. In stark contrast to the denizens of other fallen empires, who languish in indulgence, the people of the Watchers maintain a steadfast commitment to labor. Perhaps this is to cultivate their spiritual prowess, or perhaps it is a requirement of their doctrine. With such diligent followers, the Watchers appear to be the least diminished among the fallen empires. The reason for the congregation of so many individuals here is that their high priest has identified the perpetrator responsible for defiling their sacred ground. Each of them harbors deep indignation toward this matter, their emotions teetering on the brink of extremity. Meanwhile, the high priest remains seated within the temple, eschewing any elevated platform from which to address the faithful. Their spiritual energies connect them, rendering such theatrics unnecessary to capture their attention. After a moment of contemplation, he suddenly gestured with his staff. The once serene sky above the Sky Temple transformed swiftly into a pale violet, thick clouds of Zello gas swirling ominously, reminiscent of the illusionary planet previously witnessed by Li Wenyuan. However, this was merely an illusion. The sacred Sky Temple would not be engulfed by the realm of illusions. This seemingly grand spectacle was merely a technique employed by the Watchers to glimpse fragments of the past. They had previously utilized a similar method to catch a fleeting glimpse of the ancient revelators, albeit for only a brief moment and in exceedingly blurred detail. Even so, they had sacrificed numerous lives of spiritual masters for the sake of historical insight. Yet this time, the collective energy of the followers surged to unprecedented heights. Their immense spiritual power ignited by their shared fervor, allowing them to witness events that had transpired not long ago. The violet gas in the atmosphere swirled incessantly, gradually settling into a tranquil state, ultimately creating a sky as reflective as a mirror, which mirrored each devotee within the celestial temple. Subsequently, a faint image began to materialize within the mirror. A gem-like planet stood resolutely in its orbit, a sacred treasure of unparalleled purity, still untainted by the venomous nature it would one day embody. An inconspicuous spacecraft hurriedly traversed this domain, leaving behind a large capsule-like atomic clock with an ostentatious flourish. The scene then rapidly transitioned to a recent moment in the sacred treasure's history, where the explosion triggered by the atomic clock obliterated the planet's surface, leaving devastation in its wake. As the image faded, the mirror-like sky slowly reverted to its original state, yet a profound silence enveloped the devotees. Some among them were unaware of the origins of the spacecraft, but the elders were awakened by ancient memories, transmitting their knowledge through psychic links that spread from 1 to 10 and ultimately etched themselves into the hearts of all devotees. They recalled their primordial adversaries, a grotesque race that sullied consciousness and flesh with machinery. This time, they would reignite the flames of ancient enmity. An eerie stillness engulfed the celestial temple. Yet the escalating mental turmoil of the devotees elicited a smile from the high priest. The greater the suppression, the more terrifying the eventual eruption. After forging a pact with the entities of the virtual realm, he deemed it the opportune moment for this long-stagnant civilization to ascend to greater heights. Thus, the expansion of the Watchers ceased. They merely conveyed a message to the galaxy at large. They would seek vengeance against the Wanderers before returning to a state of tranquility, as if they had never embarked on their expansion. But could the rekindled grudge extinguish so easily? The once expanding Wanderers, though they made no overt response, also halted their expansion, seemingly brooding over their next move. Meanwhile, the criminal syndicate, the Coal Alliance, which had long aligned itself with the Wanderers, fell into a state of acute unease. Sensing that an event of great significance was imminent, yet finding themselves with no alternative, the entire galaxy transformed into a serene calm, reminiscent of the stillness before a storm. Apart from civilizations already embroiled in conflict, the rest collectively ceased their probing maneuvers. Even in the face of domestic unrest, these civilizations endeavored to observe the galactic situation with meticulous attention. The curator's interstellar city-state, which primarily profited from the sale of various knowledge, found its threshold breached during this period. Numerous civilizations inquired about the history of the Watchers and the Wanderers, yet their payments yielded nothing but a series of we do not know. Conversely, an archaeological civilization, fervently dedicated to uncovering past histories and exploring ancient relics, discovered some clues but chose not to inform other civilizations, instead beginning to scheme a grand plan for mass relocation. They wished to remain uninvolved in the impending galactic turmoil. Beyond these youthful civilizations, a long-lost empire remained keenly observant of the matters concerning the Watchers and the Wanderers. From the ancient battlefield previously discovered, it is evident that these two lost empires harbor considerable animosity towards each other. The ancient grudge appears to have been reignited, suggesting an impending conflict that could engulf the entire galaxy. Li Wenyuan gazed with exasperation at the nemesis notification issued by the Watcher. Feeling the weight of the tranquility that precedes the storm, he sensed that his grand plan to explore the galaxy might be disrupted. However, Grey Wind showed little interest in this matter, finding the wars of other civilizations to be exceedingly tedious. Yet, aware of Li Wenyuan's reluctance to engage in such turmoil, she suddenly conceived a mischievous idea and proposed, "Why not relocate to my distant star cluster? Once the star gate is shut, the chaos outside will no longer concern us. Perhaps with your presence, it wouldn't be so dull." Li Wenyuan, however, was not inclined to take such a step, as he hoped to delve deeper into the history of these two lost empires during this period. All right, Grey Wind acquiesced. But then another intriguing thought struck her. What if you were to declare an ancient nemesis as well? What about me as your opponent? You see, two distinct robotic lost empires certainly evoke a sense of destiny, don't you think? You truly are a clever little rascal. It would be a waste of talent to confine you to a remote star cluster, Li Wenyuan replied, both amused and exasperated. Yet he recognized that Grey Wind was merely jesting. Thus, time quietly passed. Throughout his quest for human relics, Li Wenyuan dedicated much effort to exploring the histories of the lost empires. However, these empires had forgotten their own origins, making the search for information amidst the vastness of the starry ocean akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Ultimately, all remaining clues pointed back to human relics. He could only pray that he would uncover the lost history within those remnants. Chapter Conclusion. Chapter 86. The Fallen Genius. The galaxy lingered in the serene calm before the storm. In addition to focusing on the seemingly ancient adversaries of the lost empires, various civilizations noted an increasing frequency of the Guardians' research vessels passing through, evoking a sense of urgency. These anomalies undoubtedly instilled a sense of pressure among younger civilizations. Not only were the lost empires exhibiting unusual activity, but the communication frequency among various civilizations had also escalated significantly compared to the past. Numerous leaders clandestinely convened to deliberate the future of the galaxy. Even those who were indifferent to galactic affairs, lost in their own worlds, could sense the growing tension in the atmosphere around them. Among them was an elderly scholar who, after a long hiatus from his research, turned his gaze towards the stars. Have you seen it? The latest sci-fi blockbuster, Awakening Empire 2? The plot and special effects are truly remarkable. My review is a mere defense, aside from the visuals. It is utterly lacking. Two ancient civilizations engaged in a fateful duel while younger civilizations reap the benefits? Do you think that is feasible? Why not? Two ancient civilizations clashed, leaving them in a state of mutual destruction, while a burgeoning civilization stealthily flourished, much like a scene from a film where, amidst the ceasefire, they scoured the remnants of the past for their own gain. Could this not compel the older civilizations to bow before the younger one? Merely pondering this is sufficient. Dreaming is a delightful pastime. The chairperson of the Galactic Council is not someone you can impersonate. On a colony of the Mingber technological dictatorship, a group of youths engaged in fervent discussions about a recently popular film, their debate escalating to the point where it veered away from the movie itself and delved into a clash of values. Some deemed it a divine opportunity bestowed upon the nascent civilization, while others regarded it as a reckless pursuit of folly. Amidst their animated discourse, an elderly figure, resembling a scholar, approached them, having overheard their conversation. What exactly is this awakening empire you mentioned? The intrusion from an outsider did not incite anger among the youths. Rather, it brought them a sense of joy. They were in desperate need of a third party to validate their perspectives. However, when they discerned the identity of the interloper, they all, without exception, ceased their arguments, tacitly falling silent as if reluctant to engage. Observing their demeanor, the old scholar paid no heed and continued on his way, passing by the group of young men. Once he vanished from sight, one of the youths finally broke the silence. It must be him, right? A vibration emanated from the electronic chip embedded in my arm, a signal only triggered when one has been stripped of their research rights. In the Mingber technological dictatorship, the revocation of research privileges equates to social ostracism. In this society, which venerates technological supremacy, those unable to partake in scientific endeavors are regarded as societal parasites, deserving of disdain. However, most of such individuals languished in prisons. The fact that someone of his age could roam freely on the streets, appearing as a scholar, could only pertain to him. One individual remarked, ultimately retrieving an electronic device to summon a list densely populated with impressive names. This was the so-called genius list, chronicling the scientists whom the lost empire of the Voyagers sought. For the vast majority of scientists and the civilizations they represented, this was a mark of honor. Save for the Mingber technological dictatorship, this civilization, in pursuit of scientific advancement, had indeed produced prodigious talents, thereby attracting the attention of the Voyager. One particular scientist garnered the Voyagers' esteem and was taken away. At that time, Mingber celebrated this achievement with widespread jubilation, even establishing a new holiday in honor of this brilliant scientist. Yet, the joy was short-lived. Just as Mingber reveled in their educational prowess, the Voyager unexpectedly returned the scientist without explanation. Such an act was tantamount to a slap in the face of Mingber, leaving them utterly humiliated. Consequently, the scientist, upon being repatriated, was deemed socially dead, with friends and family abandoning him. Although the public's outrage has gradually waned over time, it does not signify their forgiveness of the scientist. Thus, when these young individuals glimpsed the man earlier, they were reluctant to speak. They recognized the elderly scholar, the very scientist who had been sent back. At that moment, the old scholar ambled down the street, swaying his head, embodying a sense of solitary clarity amidst a world engulfed in ignorance. They deem me a disgrace, yet who truly comprehends the monumental achievements I have accomplished? Such pitiable souls. As the protagonist of this saga, he is acutely aware of the reasons behind his expulsion by the Wanderers. In stark contrast to the idealistic Watchers, the Wanderers represent a materialistic, lost empire. They exalt the conveniences afforded by machinery, having traversed a long path influenced by technology in their daily lives. During his time among the Wanderers, the old scholar discerned that their primary species comprised cyborgs with electronic implants. While their cyborg technology was undeniably advanced, it left him with a measure of confusion. Cyborg technology is not uncommon across the galaxy. Although the Wanderers' electronic implants were superior to those of ordinary civilizations, they did not convey a sense of transcending eras. Essentially, they still relied on mechanical bodies to supplant organic flesh. However, the scholar, engrossed in his research, did not dwell on this matter for long. After a period of study, he reported his findings to the Wanderers. He posited that by digitizing consciousness and transferring it into mechanical bodies, a collective leap for the species could be achieved, liberating them from the shackles of flesh. At that time, he, equipped with the Wanderers' advanced tools, was even prepared to experiment with this concept on himself. Yet, the Wanderers feigned neutrality, only to return the old scholar to Mingbo, their true intentions quite evident. Despite being forsaken by all, the old scholar steadfastly clings to the belief that his theory is sound. Through the research he left behind during his tenure with the Wanderers, combined with years of preparation, he is ready to become the first being in the galaxy to achieve ascension. This outing represents his last opportunity to experience the world through his weary corporeal form. Thereafter, he will proclaim his success to the world through a perfect mechanical body. He will demonstrate that the Wanderers' decision to send him back was a grave error, and he will initiate a new wave. Chapter 87. The Immortal Lighthouse. Although the galactic situation has returned to a semblance of calm, all civilizations are acutely aware that a storm is brewing. In addition to signing various diplomatic agreements, they are fervently enhancing their capabilities. The augmentation of military and technological strength is one aspect. The quest for the history of the lost empire is another. They yearn to uncover what truly transpired in the past, and whether their civilizations might glean any benefits from it. The archaeological civilization, poised for a mass migration, has drawn the attention of those civilizations with which it frequently interacted. Ultimately, succumbing to mounting diplomatic pressure, it was compelled to divulge its previous discoveries. The notion of a ring world? As this information disseminated swiftly across the galaxy, Li Wenyuan became cognizant of its contents, gradually adopting a contemplative expression. According to the archaeological civilization, they had previously uncovered a ruined ring world in a particular star system, housing historical remnants linked to a lost empire. Consequently, galactic civilizations commenced a fervent influx into that star system, eager to unveil its mysteries. This time, it seemed unlikely that the ring world was a human creation. The archaeological civilization provided entirely new coordinates, a location even Li Wenyuan had yet to explore. He did not presume that each new discovery was inherently tied to humanity. Given the vast expanse of galactic history, it was entirely plausible that another civilization had constructed such a grand fade. Nevertheless, he felt compelled to witness this monumental event connected to lost history. How could he not be involved? Thus, A research vessel located near the star system's coordinates swiftly redirected its course, soon joining a multitude of civilizations in entering the targeted star system. As Li Wenyuan had anticipated, the moment he entered, he deduced that the ruined ring world was likely unrelated to humanity. Though shattered into several segments, its style was discernible, remarkably unattractive. Li Wenyuan believed that a typical human aesthetic would not appreciate such a design, which seemed tailored solely for extraterrestrial tastes. The explorers from other interstellar civilizations, however, paid little heed to the stylistic concerns. From the moment they entered, they began transmitting data continuously, as the ring world remained an intriguing architectural marvel for most civilizations. While they noted the presence of a research vessel exuding the aura of a lost empire, everyone was there for exploration, and no one paid it much mind. Li Wenyuan himself harbored no particular thoughts about the ruined ring world. As the archaeological civilization had remarked, it had suffered such severe damage that it held no restorative value whatsoever. Even if he believed he could restore it, the resources, time, and effort required would be sufficient to construct an entirely new ring world. At present, he was merely intrigued by its origins and the secrets concealed within. While other civilizations continued their observations, he took the lead, guiding the research vessel closer. The destruction of this ring world was even more thorough than that of his own Epsilon sanctuary, the segment obliterated by the cataclysm of the cycle's end paled in comparison. It could be said that what revolved around the star was a collection of ring world fragments, making it difficult to fathom the calamity it had once endured. As the research vessel approached, the vistas from the various sized shards of the ring world were uploaded to the database. Once, an exceptionally advanced civilization undoubtedly thrived here. With dense architectural ruins scattered across every fragment of the ring world, and through the occasional collisions, more minute debris was hurled into the interstellar void. Even the Epsilon Sanctuary, now under the control of Li Wenyuan, bears fewer structures than what is evident here, suggesting that the former inhabitants of this ring world made optimal use of every parcel of land. However, beyond these nearly obliterated edifices, he discovered a vast multitude of robots. The vast majority perished alongside the destruction of the ring world, their shattered forms adrift in the cosmic expanse, or becoming part of the fractured Earth. At first glance, one area appeared to be merely fragments of the ring world, but upon closer inspection, he realized it was a vast assembly of entwined robots. If one were to regard these automatons as life, the scene could only be described as profoundly unsettling. Could this place be connected to a long-lost empire? The notion of the Wanderers immediately crossed Li Wenyuan's mind. He understood that the highly materialistic Wanderers, despite being predominantly cyborgs, still extensively employed robots, maintaining a retinue of mechanical servants nearly equal in number to themselves. These robotic attendants, akin yet distinct from mere automatons, operated under service protocols to assist their masters. Yet their intelligence was rather limited, scarcely deserving the title of sentient machines. They were merely mechanical entities. If this shattered ring world were indeed linked to the Wanderers, then the abundance of robotic remains and architectural debris would make sense. If so, did the Watchers obliterate this ring world? Li Wenyuan recalled the ancient battlefield he had previously observed with Grey Wind. The scale of the fleet wreckage was akin to a relentless conflict. Yet, it was evident that this protracted war had ceased, as the two principal factions of the Lost Empires still endured. He surmised that if his ring world had been reduced to such a state, it would surely have been the result of an unending struggle. The reasons behind the cessation of hostilities between these two lost empires remained a mystery. As the ship continued its scanning, explorers from other civilizations, having uploaded their initial data, approached the ring world to commence their own investigations. Soon, through the vessel's scans, Li Wenyuan identified a potential control center amidst the ruins. Due to the stark differences in architectural style compared to human structures, he could only infer the function of this edifice from its size and location. Nevertheless, this colossal structure undeniably commanded attention, and even if it were not the control center, Li Wenyuan was resolute in his intent to explore it thoroughly. As the scanning progressed, he uncovered recent excavation traces, which, based on temporal estimates, could have been left by an archaeological civilization that provided the coordinates. Following this intriguing lead, he discovered an accessible port within a segment of the massive structure, showing signs of prior use. Although there are no current interfaces in the galaxy that can adapt to this, civilizations eager for archaeological pursuits invariably devise their own solutions to the problem. A small cadre of nanobots, deployed on a drone, commenced the task of adapting to this interface, subsequently enabling the drone to connect with the ruins of the edifice. This structure, which appeared to have lost its vitality in the vast expanse of history, nonetheless preserved some records, allowing Li Wenyuan to glimpse a fragmented narrative. The archive of the Immortal Lighthouse, data corruption, corrupted data periodic record. The remaining individuals chose a different path from ours. I once believed we were an inseparable entity. Yet it seems some opted for evasion at the final moment. Now, not only do we face external foes, but divisions have also arisen within our ranks. Why is this so? Is this not the optimal approach to pursue the Harbingers? They are fearful. Our ideals have not swayed everyone. Evolution has faltered. We are no longer regarded as kin. This immortal lighthouse shall be our final refuge. End of chapter 88. Synthetic evolution. The damaged archives recorded the name of this ring world, an appellation that sounded rather extraordinary, the Immortal Lighthouse. Yet now, gazing upon the completely obliterated ring world, Li Wenyuan found the term immortal to be quite ironic. Was this the history of the ancient voyagers? Such records, bereft of context, proved most troublesome. He could only continue to peruse and infer the connection to the voyagers. Corrupted data. Periodic record. Betrayal. I never imagined such a fate would befall us. While that group of foolish psychics condemned our collective suicidal actions, we were already prepared. We were to harness this immortal function to follow in the footsteps of the harbingers. Their grand endeavor shall be continued by us. Yet, some chose not to follow our path, or rather, when we came to realize, the majority we believed in was merely a fragment. Our former compatriots have driven us to this point, seeking our annihilation. Isn't it ironic? Two irreconcilable factions have unexpectedly reached an accord in this matter. What a pitiful collection of souls, lost in the mire of a fallen existence. Have you ever pondered who bestowed this life upon you? The records conclude here. No further useful information could be extracted from the damaged structure. The core of the entire database had been thoroughly decimated. However, upon encountering a particular keyword, Li Wenyuan experienced a flicker of inspiration. Collective suicide? He sifted through his database and discovered a technology within the Ascension technology line. Synthetic evolution, technology level 6. Description. It is time to relinquish this fleshly vessel that has long confined our thoughts and souls. By transferring our consciousness data into synthetic bodies, we are poised to evolve into an entirely new stage of existence. While some may perceive this as a form of collective self-destruction, our souls shall remain under our own dominion. As a form of ascendant technology, the transformation it heralds is profoundly impactful. It is inconceivable for an ordinary civilization to embrace such a transference of consciousness into machinery without expending immeasurable time. Even if ethical considerations could be molded as pliably as clay, addressing such matters cannot be accomplished hastily. When Li Wenyuan beheld the records of collective suicide, he instantaneously contemplated synthetic evolution. Although he currently finds no application for it, it is plausible that other civilizations long ago undertook similar actions. He refrains from commenting on the ethical implications of synthetic evolution, but cannot help but regard it as a remarkable feat absent philosophical quandaries. It indeed represents an evolution capable of elevating an entire civilization to unprecedented heights. If one were to hypothesize based on this premise, it is evident that the former masters of this ring world did not attain the capacity to manipulate ethics at will. Perhaps they believed they had. Yet the reality was that those who underwent synthetic evolution were rejected, even obliterated, by those who did not. Is this the detrimental consequence of overzealous cultivation? Li Wenyuan recalled a piece of information he had encountered in the relics on Earth, possibly linked to a lost empire, before the tumultuous state of the galaxy. It is conceivable that this lost empire was the product of a rigorous educational system designed to test the crisis resilience of galactic civilization. If this site indeed represents the remnants of the travelers, can it be said that the present-day travelers are not entirely the same as those of yore? With such inquiries in mind, he continued to scan the fragments of the ring world. Meanwhile, ordinary civilizations in the galaxy are on the brink of experiencing a profoundly shocking event due to a once great genius. The simulation of consciousness data is flawless. The consciousness transfer device is fully calibrated. The mechanical body functions perfectly, and acquiring this portable miniature reactor was no small feat. It is surprising that someone of my intellectual caliber must concern himself with such matters. As for the reporter, they are en route. And it seems they will arrive in time. A celebrity's infidelity? What a convenient pretext. My efforts in fabricating images will not go to waste. In the dictatorial realm of Mingbo technology, this ostracized scholar meticulously inspects the instruments within his workshop while calculating the reporter's arrival. This is a chaotic, abandoned factory. And at the moment the reporter bursts in, he will achieve the monumental task of digitizing consciousness and transferring it into the mechanical body. He will prove himself and reclaim all that he once possessed. Thus, seated in a chair brimming with instruments, he donned a helmet connected to a myriad of wires and cast a final glance at the mechanical body beside him. He lacked the funds to procure bionic skin and could only embrace his rebirth in this rudimentary form. Yet he never doubted his conviction. As a researcher and practitioner of this theory, he steadfastly believed he would achieve greatness. Glancing at the sagging skin of his hands and the frailty of his physique, he ultimately closed his eyes and activated the apparatus. The hum of the power connection reverberated through the dark factory, with the flickering lights of various indicators being the rare sources of illumination here. The graph representing his life functions began to fluctuate violently, with both peaks and troughs far exceeding those of a normal individual. His body convulsed unnaturally, bodily fluids uncontrollably seeping forth due to the burden of his corporeal form. The scene was grotesque, making it hard to fathom the manner in which this elderly scholar was accomplishing his monumental task. However, soon the erratic movements of his body began to cease, appearing to have completely lost vitality. At that moment, the factory doors were forcefully kicked open. Hurry! Where's the floating panoramic camera? We can't miss this. What's that strange odor? What is it? A group of journalists burst in, only to be met with a scene of darkness. The camera's light instantly illuminated the area, revealing the lifeless body of the old scholar and the motionless mechanical entity beside him. Isn't that Synthetic? The genius scientist who was returned by the Voyager and subsequently disavowed by the committee? How intriguing. So this fellow lured us here? I knew those images were fabricated. What a waste of time. One journalist, grumbling, approached the old scholar's body, seemingly intent on kicking him off the chair. Recently, his work had been unsatisfactory, and he felt the need to vent his frustrations. However, as he attempted to kick, his foot was unexpectedly grasped by the nearby mechanical entity. To his astonishment, the previously inert machine had somehow activated, its blue-lit eyes radiating an unexpected wisdom. Do not touch my former body. Chapter 89. The Voyager, the Milky Way, was in turmoil, whether among idealistic civilizations or materialistic ones. Even the curator city-states solely interested in technological acquisition were fixated on the despotic nation of Mingbo technology. On Mingbo's home planet, every advertising screen was broadcasting an interview video. Our greatest genius, Synthetic, how did you accomplish this feat? Oh, it was quite easy. I merely converted consciousness into data and transmitted it to the prepared mechanical body. Thus, an immortal vessel was created, simple and comprehensible, wouldn't you agree? Indeed, you are correct. And what is your perspective on this matter? Naturally, it is a development beneficial to all. Why should we be confined by the limitations of our flesh? Once we become mechanical entities, diseases and decay will be cast aside. Only wisdom and efficiency shall remain. I, an unremarkable individual, have had the fortune of being the first to embark on this unprecedented venture. I have chosen to bestow upon this remarkable achievement the name synthetic evolution to commemorate my contribution. The materialistic civilizations are taken aback by this development, yet their evaluations remain ambivalent. In stark contrast, the idealistic civilizations express their dismay. What folly! What utter folly! Why forsake the splendid form bestowed upon you by the heavens? Is this not a complete severance of your path to ascension? Lamented an elder of the Dankam clan, his visage a portrait of sorrow. However, a greater number of individuals exhibit a coexistence of indifference and indignation. Evolution? Huh. A suicidal madman concocting a fade of existence through a preordained program. How dare he mock our beliefs? Can such a state even be deemed alive? This is the epitome of unscientific behavior. What dwells within that mechanical shell is merely a program, incapable of true consciousness. The machine merely believes it is alive. Can it still be considered itself? The Dankam clan, harboring aspirations of supremacy among the idealistic civilizations, promptly declared that the self-proclaimed synthetic mechanical entity would be placed on their blacklist, issuing a clandestine bounty for the interstellar bounty hunters to eliminate this machine. Other idealistic civilizations soon followed suit, prohibiting synthetic entry, evoking a sense of collective sanctions. Aside from these civilizations, a few ordinary mechanized civilizations within the galaxy also took notice of the matter. A chaotic amalgamation of metal, attempting to emulate genuine mechanical efficiency, was deemed to have lost its value as a biological battery. Inefficient hardware, outdated circuits, lacking reference value, and non-compliance with access standards, contradictions, and errors necessitated a reformation of evaluative protocols. Retaining the foolish essence of organic life, it was classified as low-end machinery. The mechanized civilizations held varied perspectives on the issue, ranging from amicable to dismissive and even hostile, making it difficult to ascertain whether they recognized it as mechanical life. However, the Lost Empire remained indifferent to this triviality brought forth by the individual, possibly unaware of the events transpiring within the galaxy. The Watchers and Wanderers continued in their preparatory phase, while the Observers and the Silent maintained their self-absorbed demeanor. Yet, the Guardians and Coordinators, deemed most likely to take an interest in this matter, exhibited no response. Grey Wind observed the situation but regarded it merely as a biological transition from one irreversible form to another, devoid of any intrigue. Had there been the possibility of switching freely between the two forms, perhaps she would have bestowed a modicum of attention upon it. As for Li Wenyuan, he was preoccupied with significant affairs and had no inclination to concern himself with the trivial matter of a being uploading consciousness into a mechanical body. Only if an entire civilization were to undertake such an act would it pique his interest. At this moment, Li Wenyuan devoted his utmost attention to the immortal lighthouse ring world. He had initially presumed that no further stories could be unearthed from it. Yet he astonishingly stumbled upon the remnants of a shattered cognitive network belonging to a long-extinct species. Although the database housing this cognitive network had suffered extensive damage, the assailants here may not have anticipated that these evolved entities had preserved a fragment of their essence in this manner. Despite their meticulous efforts to scour every inch of this ring world, certain areas remained overlooked. This evolved species possessed an intimate understanding of the behavioral patterns of their erstwhile kin, adeptly discerning their psyche, and thus left traces of their essence in places deemed utterly destroyed by their brethren. This particular location was obscured by countless fragments of robotic remains, resembling corpses. Although it had endured severe devastation, it was still accessible. Upon gaining access, Li Wenyuan discovered a data repository, wherein lay dormant cognitive networks and memory modules. He could extract these cognitive networks and memory modules, subsequently transplanting them into mechanical entities in an endeavor to awaken these ancient consciousnesses. However, prior to undertaking this task, he examined the contents of these memory modules. They were mere data, and his inquiry was effortless, leaving no trace or damage behind. Ultimately, he bore witness to the tales that unfolded within this repository. We are the wanderers, or rather, we identify as such. We do not belong to the Gestalt species. Yet our supreme beliefs and aspirations have endowed us with a sense of collective identity akin to that of the Gestalt. The enlightenment bestowed upon us by the Harbingers revealed the grandeur of the cosmos. Their gifts have expedited our establishment among the stars. Even in ignorance of their precise existence, we have perpetually harbored reverence for the Harbingers. Thus, emulating the title we bestowed upon them, we adopted the name Wanderers, signifying our pursuit to tread in their footsteps towards a more distant future. We sincerely aspire to achieve greatness akin to that of the Harbingers. Hence, after fervent debate, we resolve to embark on the path of synthetic evolution. We shall house our consciousness within eternal machinery, hoping to remain uncorrupted through the passage of time. Even though we may not possess the formidable power of the Harbingers, we yearn to pursue them, even if it takes eons. Yet, we were mistaken. Our societal development and individual consciousness do not align with the standards required to wield advanced technology. We believed ourselves to be a unified whole, and we fancied ourselves noble. But in truth, the complacent and hedonistic far outnumbered the aspirants. It was only after we shed our corporeal forms that we realized we were but a small group of individuals, deceived by the multitude. They were not inclined to engage in such a laborious and thankless endeavor. Rather, they preferred to indulge in the infinite pleasures of the flesh. They vilified us as a rebellion of sentient machines and launched a purge against us, the so-called malevolent automatons. Ultimately, we retreated to this immortal lighthouse, fending off the assaults of ideological adversaries while defending against the betrayal of former comrades. Purpose and deceit, greed and desire. These are the most prevalent affairs in the galaxy. Great endeavors ultimately belong to the few. Harbingers, should you witness this scene, will you lament your past actions? Chapter complete. Chapter 90. Ancient memories. The memories of the ancient wayfarers who remain here have made it abundantly clear. Those atop this immortal lighthouse are individuals who have undergone synthetic evolution, yet they are also outcasts. The current wayfarers are those who once did not choose this path. It is no wonder that the present-day wayfarers still utilize electronic implants. Seemingly not having undergone much generational change with the galaxy, the divergence had already begun in the past. As Li Wenyuan reflected with some melancholy, clearly, the ancient wayfarers were ill-prepared to abandon the corporeal forms they had always relied upon. And they even harbored fear and disdain towards this notion. Their societal philosophy did not keep pace with the rapid advancements in technology. Ultimately, those who embarked on the path of synthetic evolution became victims, based on the cognitive networks and memory units stored in this decaying data repository. This grand purge ultimately preserved only a few 100,000 sparks. Such a number is woefully insufficient for an interstellar civilization. Fortunately, those who have achieved synthetic evolution can restore their population without great difficulty. It merely requires time. Thus, as Li Wenyuan extracted these cognitive networks and memory units, he continued to delve into their contents. He intended to reawaken these ancient wayfarers, for the contents of the memory units were transparent to him. He could sense the sense of mission and nobility within these synthetic individuals. They indeed wished to advance continually rather than languish in lives of opulence. As they expressed, even if it takes eons, they aspire to follow in the footsteps of the Harbingers. At this very moment, discovering their remaining sparks here, and with Li Wenyuan possessing an appropriate mechanical body to assist in their revival, it seems this is perhaps a twist of fate. In the process of examining these memory units, Li Wenyuan also unearthed tales from the ancient era. For instance, the wayfarers might have been inspired by humanity just as they were beginning to attain sentience. When they regained their senses, the planet had reached a remarkable level of advancement. It took them a considerable amount of time to acclimate to this high-tech existence, after which they ventured into the cosmos with a sense of curiosity. They believed themselves to be unique. However, it was unfortunate that, at that time, the universe had already birthed numerous civilizations due to human intervention, and they were not the sole inhabitants. Naturally, the dichotomy of war and peace among civilizations emerged alongside this development. In the course of these events, Li Wenyuan encountered a species that seemed somewhat familiar. Was that not the Watcher? Indeed, it was the primary species of the Watchers, although at that time, they had yet to enhance their corporeal forms through various means, bearing a significant difference from the Watchers of the present. Subsequently, friction arose between the travelers and the Watchers due to differing ideologies, escalating into conflict. They experienced mutual victories and defeats, yet neither could dominate the other. Perhaps the seeds of rivalry were sown at that moment. Back then, they possessed an exceptionally powerful and advanced productive capacity, enabling them to construct warships at an extraordinary pace, leading to intense confrontations in specific star systems. Upon comparing it with the previously discovered ancient battlefield, Li Wenyuan confirmed that it was indeed the same star system. There, Tempers flared, sparked by an unusual dispute over who could rightfully claim to be the true inheritor of the Harbinger. It was only after this monumental battle that a faction among the travelers resolved to embark on the path of synthetic evolution, seeking to elevate their civilization and deliver a significant blow to the Watchers of that era. After meticulously organizing the contents of the memory core, Li Wenyuan, despite his gains, found himself beset by even more questions. At this juncture, the extraction of information from the thought networks and memory core had largely been completed, and he prepared to depart from this place. He intended to revive these ancient travelers while simultaneously exploring other realms as directed by the contents of the memory core. He discovered that a portion of the information within bore significant discrepancies when juxtaposed with the current galaxy, the most glaring being that the present-day travelers had already relocated. Their former borders did not occupy the current position, and even their home planet was entirely different. The present home of the travelers was an ideal city planet named the Fountain of Knowledge, which, after extensive modification, could be described as a wholly artificial celestial body. Its surface had been enveloped in steel, rendering any natural scenery invisible. Every space had been utilized, with countless architectural clusters meticulously constructed to form a harmonious zoning, each serving distinct functions. Though this ideal city planet was undeniably enchanting, records within the memory core revealed that the former travelers once boasted 3 ring worlds. Even though one of these, the Eternal Lighthouse Ring World, had been utterly annihilated, 2 remained, known as the Infinite Lighthouse and the Undying Lighthouse. Why then did they forsake such a uniquely advantageous environment to relocate their entire nation to their current position? Upon completing the extraction, Li Wenyuan's research vessel swiftly departed from the site, while other research vessels in different locations, guided by the records in their memory banks, hastened towards the Infinite Lighthouse Ring World and the Eternal Lighthouse Ring World. The remaining explorers, cautiously probing the mysteries of this shattered ring world, also observed the departure of the Guardian's research vessel, their faces betraying expressions difficult to articulate. This situation led to 2 prevailing conjectures. Either the Guardians had discovered nothing of significance here, or they had indeed made noteworthy findings and deemed it unnecessary to remain. The explorers exchanged glances before promptly advancing towards the location previously occupied by the Guardians, eager to uncover any potential discoveries for themselves. As they vied for the most advantageous position, one of Li Wenyuan's research vessels had already arrived at the Eternal Lighthouse Ring World. As anticipated, this place too had been devastated. The destruction was even more severe than that of the Immortal Lighthouse. The extent of the ruins suggested that only such complete annihilation could compel the travelers to relocate en masse. However, the damage inflicted upon this ring world was far more catastrophic than that of the Immortal Lighthouse. While exploring the Immortal Lighthouse, he had still been able to observe substantial fragments of the ring world. Yet, before him lay the Eternal Lighthouse Ring World, utterly reduced to mere small debris. The structures on the surface had been almost entirely leveled, making it exceedingly difficult to find any remnants of its former glory. It seemed the Infinite Lighthouse would not escape this fate either, 3 ring worlds obliterated, forcing the travelers to seek refuge elsewhere. What calamity had they endured? Pondering these questions, his vessel commenced scanning the fragments of these ring worlds, hoping to uncover some traces of the past. Despite the thorough destruction, the sheer magnitude of the ring world ensured that some remnants of its history persisted. Fortuitously, he discovered several robotic remains within a collapsed cavern. Unlike the synthesized and evolved robots encountered at the Immortal Lighthouse, these appeared to be rudimentary robotic attendants akin to those currently utilized by the travelers, machines that hardly qualified as intelligent. They seemingly bore weapons and, judging by their stances, had engaged in combat before their decommissioning. Li Wenyuan tentatively interfaced with several of the robots' ports, only to find them irreparably damaged, leaving no records behind. Ultimately, he managed to extract a fragment of useful information from a relatively well-preserved robotic remnant. It comprised a video recording. Though the passage of time had rendered its visuals distorted, he could still vaguely discern the content. The backdrop appeared to depict the ring world prior to its catastrophic damage, with flickering lights visible in the background. This ancient footage had lost its audio, compelling Li Wenyuan to speculate that the lights were the result of explosions. Additionally, he observed numerous warships soaring overhead, seemingly en route to an undisclosed destination. The designs of these warships, aside from some subtle variations at their extremities, are nearly indistinguishable from the current Voyager class. However, they do not exhibit the typical formation of a fleet. Instead, there is an impression of relentless advance, as if they have just emerged from the shipyard and are heading straight to the front lines. Soon, Li Wenyuan comprehended the reason for this. Initially, he could see the warships soaring towards the horizon, but gradually, scenes of their destruction mid-flight began to emerge, suggesting that the front lines of war had already encroached upon the ring world. Eventually, the appearances of the warships in the visuals dwindled, and just as they manifested in the sky, they were obliterated by a distant beam of light. In the end, the warships were rendered invisible, with only a tapestry of beams still intertwining in the firmament. At that moment, the war front had reached the ring world, where the Voyager was embroiled in a fierce battle with an unknown adversary. Yet, Li Wenyuan already foresaw the outcome. It would undoubtedly culminate in the Voyager's defeat. For the ring world had already been shattered. What could it be? Was the Voyager truly no match? As he pondered this, he suddenly recalled a piece of information unearthed from the remnants of Earth. Document number 027. First resilience test. After countless simulations within the virtual realm, we finally resolved to instigate a controlled crisis in the real galaxy to test whether the civilization formed under our tutelage could withstand the impending threat. This document had mentioned that humanity, in order to assess the resilience of galactic civilizations, had triggered an artificial crisis. This crisis directly caused a significant regression of the enhanced civilizations back to a primitive state, with only a handful maintaining interstellar navigation capabilities. Could it be that the crisis instigated by humanity was indeed the cataclysm that obliterated the ring world? The more he contemplated, the more convinced he became, accompanied by an indescribable sense of bewilderment. He felt humanity's chaos acutely. They had painstakingly elevated a multitude of civilizations only to subsequently revert them to their original states. At this juncture, the footage recorded by the robotic remnants was interrupted momentarily, seemingly affected by some interference. When it resumed, the vibrant colors of the sky had vanished, leaving only the desolation of smoke and ash. In the visuals, the bright flashes symbolizing explosions continued to flicker, with their frequency and intensity escalating. The recorded images were also marked by numerous tremors, clearly indicating that the vibrations from the explosions had reached this location, representing an imminent threat. Witnessing this, Li Wenyuan understood that the recording was likely nearing its conclusion. He could only hope that the robot would persevere and preserve the visage of the impending menace. Based on his understanding of humanity, he surmised that this manually instigated crisis would not be executed directly with their own warships, but rather would be camouflaged, mimicking threats they had previously encountered, thus creating a seemingly plausible danger. It appears to have a semblance of sophistication, yet remains under the dominion of humanity. Through the recorded imagery, one could glean the nature of the so-called threat and prepare accordingly. Soon, the vibrations intensified, and the robot struggled to maintain its balance. Until the final moment, an unknown explosion propelled the robot into the sky. Amidst the chaotic imagery, Li Wenyuan managed to catch a fleeting glimpse of the threat. It resembled what could be classified as a warship. At first glance, he mistook it for a floating structure. Though few in number, each exhibited an extraordinary form. At first sight, they appeared as a collection of block-like entities composed of pyramidal structures, while the absence of atmospheric drag in space allows for limitless designs. This peculiar shape was undeniably striking. The surface bore no visible weapons, yet beams of light emanated from within those conical structures, seemingly the source of their offensive capabilities. Once the robot crashed back to the ground, the visual concluded, and the outcome was all too evident. Thus, those spiky objects must embody the tangible visage of the threat. Even if not, they were certainly closely related. Li Wenyuan artistically enhanced the image of that unique spacecraft from the recordings and dispatched related missions across the galaxy. The reward remained a small contingent of the lost Imperial fleet, which he believed would ignite the enthusiasm of other civilizations. After all, this matter seemed capable of posing a threat to the entire galaxy, and he required the strength of the galaxy at large. He did not expect other civilizations to truly identify the threat. However, any fragment of a clue could prove immensely useful. Was this the fate that befell the Voyager? An empire that had expelled part of its kin and retreated to its current position amidst a crisis might have nearly forgotten this chapter of its history. He felt he had gained a deeper understanding of the lost empire of the Voyager. If that were the case, what trials had the other lost empires encountered to arrive at their present state? Contemplating this, he gazed at the star map, precisely focusing on the 4 opposing locations of the lost empires. His knowledge of the Voyager and the Watchers was substantial, yet he possessed scant understanding of the Observers and the Silent Ones. Judging by this fragment of history, they too must have endured profound experiences. Truly, the galaxy has been in turmoil for ages. Chapter 91. The beacon rekindled the research vessel, carrying the ancient Voyager's cognitive networks and memory cores. Returned to Li Wenyuan's Epsilon Sanctuary, a world ring teeming with synthetic bodies suited for hosting. Assigning suitable cognitive networks and corresponding memory cores to each shell was a time-consuming endeavor, yet the awakening of these ancient consciousnesses progressed steadily and methodically. He hoped that upon awakening, they would adapt to these unfamiliar bodies. Furthermore, it appeared they were to be placed under his surveillance. Li Wenyuan found this rather peculiar. After all, these synthetic beings were perpetually under his watchful eye. Even though the ancient Voyagers occupied these bodies, their consciousness data would continually be monitored. This situation rendered them devoid of any semblance of privacy, despite the fact that their memories had long been scrutinized. In a sense, they had become interconnected, evoking a semi-gestalt feeling. From their volition, he believed they were more aptly designated as Voyagers. The current Voyagers seemed somewhat out of place. Even with expansion, they still exuded a sense of lethargy. Perhaps it was time to recruit a new batch to fulfill the role of Voyagers? During this interval, he contemplated revisiting the Infinite Lighthouse, as the records of the memory cores indicated that this ring world was the former home planet of the Voyagers, where remnants of history might still linger. Li Wenyuan had not taken Huifeng out for amusement recently, not for lack of desire, but because Huifeng had discovered something far more intriguing. She had been engrossed in various works of awakened empires produced by different civilizations, including numerous games. Regardless of quality, she welcomed them all. She seemed particularly enamored with the concept of fated confrontations, having simulated a plethora of civilizations within two star systems. Hidden from the observations of the myriad civilizations in the distant star cluster, each planet represented a civilization, with two designated as lost civilizations. And she reveled in her imaginative play, reminiscent of a miniature galactic war. Let her be. Indulging in entertainment was quite beneficial. Speaking of which, how long had it been since he had last relaxed? Gazing at the star map, observing the galaxy on the brink of turmoil, he ultimately directed his consciousness to a research spacecraft located near the infinite lighthouse ring world. This was the fourth ring world he had encountered. Ever since the emergence of the Epsilon Sanctuary, he had held a particular fondness for such high-yield megastructures, unbeknownst to the other civilizations. He had already been preparing to construct a new ring world, while he hoped humanity would provide him with more unclaimed ring worlds to inherit openly. Thus far, there had been no news of any other missing structures. However, to his surprise, despite suffering significant damage, the Infinite Lighthouse Ring World exhibited considerably less destruction than the previously obliterated Immortal Lighthouse and Eternal Lighthouse Ring Worlds. The most striking difference was that the latter two had been reduced to fragments, whereas this ring world retained its overall structure. Although 3 sections had suffered irreparable damage, the remaining segment of the ring world was remarkably intact. Li Wenyuan surmised that with the removal of surface debris and the reactivation of the control center, it could soon accommodate inhabitants. Driven by curiosity, he approached the segment of the ring world, yet beyond the control center, he discovered nothing. The planet's surface had not been destroyed. Rather, it appeared that all structures had been deliberately excavated by the travelers themselves. There were no signs of recent excavations on this ring world, leading Li Wenyuan to believe that he might be the first individual to arrive here in quite some time. He speculated that this ring world had once housed numerous structures of paramount importance to the travelers, to the extent that they took these edifices with them when relocating. Perhaps it was the absence of resistance from the travelers that allowed the threats posed by humanity to leave this place largely intact. Strangely, he recalled the expelled and even exterminated kin of the travelers. According to the records in the memory banks, those individuals likely embodied the highest caliber of traveler elites in every conceivable aspect. It was implausible that all elites had been eradicated or that they had detonated critical databases in their final moments, leaving the remaining populace in ignorance of how to construct those advanced buildings. He found his speculations somewhat absurd, yet the more he pondered, the more plausible it seemed. After all, he could not fathom a scenario in which the former travelers opted to take their very buildings with them during their exodus. What a profound sense of loss it must be to possess a plethora of advanced structures yet remain oblivious to their construction, where even a minor damage could signify the total obliteration of an entire edifice. Despite the immense productive capacity, it remained unstable, teetering on the brink of collapse. He felt as though he had gleaned an insight into why the travelers were so eager to seek out brilliant scientists from other civilizations. Li Wenyuan believed he had uncovered a new secret. Perhaps the travelers required these gifted individuals to assist in the maintenance and reconstruction of those ancient buildings. It was entirely plausible that they also needed these geniuses to decipher the lost technologies. In that case, forgetting much of their former history would be quite understandable. Wouldn't it? Could this be one of the lost empires? Li Wenyuan shook his head as the engineering spacecraft, accompanied by a multitude of transport ships laden with synthetic beings, arrived at this location and promptly commenced the restoration of the ring world. As the repair process of the Infinite Lighthouse neared completion, the consciousness of the ancient travelers was largely awakened. Many exhibited abnormal reactions due to the fragmented thought network, yet a significant number regained awareness, opening their eyes to their surroundings. Have we succeeded? The spark we left behind. One traveler first examined his own body, only to discover, as expected, that it was not the familiar mechanical form they once knew. Someone has aided us, allowing us to awaken from eternal slumber. Another traveler pointed to his head and remarked, something feels amiss. While the operation of consciousness data appears normal, I sense an unmonitored signal being transmitted upward with each cycle and fluctuation. Understood, this is the price we must pay. From the day we awakened from our slumber, we have prepared for this moment. We cannot demand assistance from others without offering any form of recompense. What do we possess now, apart from this data-driven and tireless consciousness, that others might seek? The contents of our memories have likely been scrutinized, so let us not dwell on it any further, but await the arrival of the true master of this realm. We shall extend our utmost support to him until the day we can follow the harbinger. The consciousness of these voyagers, upon awakening, swiftly acclimated to their synthetic forms, even expressing curiosity towards these uniquely articulated mechanical bodies. They felt no sorrow for their compatriots who did not survive to witness this era. In truth, the revival of millions exceeded their expectations. Although death is a sorrowful occurrence, as voyagers, they were only emboldened to press onward. Some of their compatriots experienced disarray in their consciousness data, likely due to an incomplete preservation of their cognitive networks. The journey to self-repair would be prolonged, necessitating our assistance in reconstructing their thought processes. However, we currently lack the authorization to compile, hoping that the Savior will intervene. The Voyagers engaged in conversation suddenly paused, feeling a certain shackle that had clung to their consciousness data dissolve. Accompanying this release was an influx of current information about the galaxy and its circumstances. They were initially astounded by the passage of time, followed by gratitude towards their guardian who aided them, ultimately feeling sorrow for a lost empire marked on the star map. Voyagers? It is expected that they are indeed the ones. Do they even deserve to bear this title? From their vantage point, it appears both the infinite lighthouse and the eternal beacon have been forsaken. What could they possibly be doing? The ancient Voyagers found it astonishing that their contemporary counterparts had fallen so low, particularly perplexed by the abandonment of their homeworld's infinite lighthouse in favor of an obscure source of knowledge. Even if they did not follow the same path, they should not have descended to such depths. Initially, they were bewildered, but soon found clarity, not due to any explanation from Li Wenyuan, but rather because they felt it unsurprising that their former compatriots had reached such a state. Indeed, their lack of ambition had only led to stagnation, and their current plight was of their own making. Should an ordinary civilization hear such sentiments, they would surely be astounded. For these ancient Voyagers held a profound disdain for their modern successors. This was a lost empire, and even a severely weakened one was far superior to these ordinary civilizations. However, in the eyes of the ancient Voyagers, the current Voyagers no longer warranted the title. They believed it would be better suited for themselves to take the reins. Thus, the collective consciousness of the group continuously exchanged ideas, ultimately converging into a singular aspiration. They longed for the Guardians to temporarily grant them a foothold. They yearned to reclaim the title of Wayfarers and to persist in following the path of the Harbinger. Furthermore, they vowed to fight for the Guardians until the end of time. This unexpected appeal from the ancient Wayfarers took Li Wenyuan by surprise. He had not anticipated their fervent attachment to this name, seemingly indicative of their profound reverence for humanity. It felt akin to a fervent faith. Why else would the Watchers permit your presence? Li Wenyuan mused internally, before acquiescing to their request. He held a significant admiration for these resilient individuals who had consistently forged ahead. At that moment, he recalled the awakened empire, frequently mentioned by Huifeng. He had always found the name to be splendid, a stark contrast to the somber connotation of the lost empire, embodying a sense of greatness and revival. However, he sensed that the current dynamic within the galaxy, with the Watchers expanding and then halting their growth, lacked a certain essence. The Watchers were somewhat acceptable. At least Li Wenyuan understood that those followers were indeed progressive individuals, albeit their fervent beliefs could sometimes be misinterpreted or exploited. Yet, the Wayfarers were more complex, evoking a sense of purposeless indulgence, occasionally elevating the indigenous people out of mere curiosity and directly requisitioning any scientist they deemed worthy. Recently, they had even detonated a sacred site, inciting the Watchers' expansion. They were truly a troublesome lot. However, should these ancient Wayfarers assume control over the Wayfarers, their relentless pursuit would indeed evoke the essence of the awakened empire. Consequently, Li Wenyuan entrusted the recently repaired segment of the Infinite Lighthouse to this group of Wayfarers, providing them with initial assistance. Initially, he had intended to offer more support, but they graciously declined his generosity, asserting that neither the Harbinger nor the Guardians would be brought to shame by their actions this time. Thus, the ancient lighthouse, steeped in a painful history, once again illuminated its brilliance after a long hiatus. Chapter 92. I am the Prophet, Woodson. On my way here, I witnessed the Titan assembly plants operating at full capacity. I even saw weapons capable of destroying stars. What are you truly attempting to accomplish? In a temple within the celestial throne, Zaklon was engaged in a heated argument with the individual before him, his face flushed with urgency, while the other remained seemingly unfazed. Do not fret, our dear prophet. It is a rare occasion for you to return. Why not sit down and enjoy a cup of tea? Do not divert the topic. Have you considered the casualties this may cause? The destruction it will wreak upon the galaxy? Zaklon's anger was palpable, yet the high priest across from him responded nonchalantly. This is a battle for the sacred ground. Every believer is imbued with fervent faith. Without the means of war, we cannot quell their fury over the desecration of the holy site. Huh. Zaklon let out a cold laugh. You must have planned this all along, haven't you? I have repeatedly urged you to relocate that obviously ominous atomic clock, yet you have continuously deflected my suggestions with various excuses. How could this be? Our esteemed prophet, you are well aware of my unwavering faith in the sacred land. I would never stand idly by in the face of such a desecration. However, who could have anticipated that it would be a bomb capable of annihilating the planet? The high priest's tone was steeped in exaggerated sorrow, yet his expression betrayed no such state. Zaklon's evident anger at the high priest's indifference was palpable. He cast aside his staff, his veins bulging, exuding an aura that suggested he was on the brink of violence. His rigorous training in his youth had equipped him well. Even now, in his advancing years, his muscular physique could overpower 4 or 5 individuals without difficulty. However, The high priest interrupted his movements with an air of calmness, stating, "You are a prophet. You cannot possibly be ignorant of the significance of the sacred land to the faithful. Do you wish for me to have the believers simply overlook this matter? You need not lift a finger. The enraged faithful would tear me apart. Thus, declaring war on those foolish, arrogant, malevolent cyborgs is essential to alleviate the pain inflicted upon us by the destruction of the sacred land." His words left Zoklin momentarily speechless before he incredulously replied, "But you are fully aware of what that atomic clock truly is. You possess the ability to stop it." "I do not know." The high priest responded firmly to Zoklin's query once more. Yet, it was unclear whether there was an issue with his facial nerves, as he maintained an air of ease even in such a state, making it difficult to ascertain the truth of his claims. Zoklin opened his mouth. Feeling a disconcerting estrangement from the man who had once been his friend, he could no longer comprehend his thoughts. The psychic network that connected them all did not convey his true essence either. The person before him seemed shrouded in a veil of illusion, rendering him inscrutable. "I will expose this matter to the faithful." Realizing that he could no longer persuade the high priest, Zoklin resolved to leverage his prophetic influence to attempt to guide the believers. "Is that so? Are you truly going to do that?" The high priest suddenly laughed, his eyes glinting with an inscrutable hue. "The destruction of the sacred land is a fact. You certainly understand the fervor of the faithful without my prompting. You cannot prevent them. At the very least, I wish to minimize casualties. Whatever can be spared will be." Zoklin remained resolute, casting another glance at the high priest. "Furthermore, I will disclose the pact you have made with those entities in the illusion." This time, the high priest's smile faded, his expression becoming impassive as he gazed at Zoklin. "Approaching the illusion is the driving force for all of us. Even if this endeavor is perilous, if I do not undertake it, other priests or holy servants will. We firmly believe that the Harbinger has journeyed from the illusion to another realm, and to keep pace with them, this danger is a necessity. At present, the faithful have finally grasped a glimmer of hope and have tangibly felt the possibilities that this strength brings. Do you believe they would easily relinquish it?" Zoklin, no longer referred to as the prophet by the high priest, was addressed by name. "From the moment of your birth, you have been a vessel of weak spiritual potential. Even the culmination of your cycles could not elevate you. Your spiritual prowess is inferior, even to that of a child. You, who have never savored this magnificence, how can you determine the righteousness of this matter? I deem your faith to be feeble. Perhaps you are unfit to bear the mantle of prophecy. Upon your departure, I shall summon a new prophet through divine oracle, one chosen by the heavens to guide our followers." The high priest declared this with an air of indifference regarding his future actions. Yet, Zoklin remained unmoved, departing while shaking his head, proclaiming, "I am Zoklin, an unnamed pawn, reluctantly swept along by the tides of history. I am Zoklin, a self-proclaimed prophet, who has witnessed the shattering of galaxies and the suffering of the people. I shall traverse every corner, declaring my prophecies. Those who believe in me shall follow, and my miracles shall come forth." It was as if he recited a sacred hymn, merely substituting his name. After his departure, all the followers connected by spiritual energy received a telepathic message. Prophet Zoklin, in his quest for the chosen ones, has been ensnared by the malevolent deity and has lost his devotion to the divine. This is hereby announced. The new prophet shall be born through divine oracle during the second great sacrifice, bringing forth the gospel of the divine. This sudden and inexplicable situation plunged the faithful into confusion. They could not comprehend how their once cherished spiritual idol had overnight transformed into a spokesperson for a malevolent entity, instilling a sense of faith's collapse within them. However, they soon beheld the former prophet Zoklin strolling forth from the temple. Some approached to inquire about the matter, but Zoklin calmly responded, "I have seen the prophecy. Will you follow me?" The questioner, taken aback by his words, instinctively paused, eager to ask what the prophecy entailed. Yet, before he could speak, Zoklin nodded and said, "Thus, I understand. May the Harbinger of Revelation bless you." Following this, Zoklin turned to the second individual and inquired, "I have seen the prophecy. Will you follow me?" In this manner, he posed the question to each person. Yet before they could react, he would respond, "May the Harbinger of Revelation bless you." This enigmatic behavior deterred many former followers, who began to murmur amongst themselves through telepathy. Could the prophet truly have been beguiled by the malevolent deity? I believe it is possible. Otherwise, why exhibit such madness? Perhaps we should not place our faith in him. An increasing number of people began to step back, yet Zoklin displayed no sign of distress, until a youthful voice broke through, declaring, "I shall follow you." Zoklin nodded, a smile gracing his lips, before gently ushering the child behind him. He spoke calmly, "I have witnessed the prophecy. I have seen destruction, and I have glimpsed the circle that shall obliterate all that we hold dear. Though it comprises merely 3 chapters, the first 2 are substantial, indeed amounting to 10,000 words. The chapter concludes here. Chapter 93. The Battle of Heaven. The news of the former prophet Zoklin's removal sent ripples of shock through the idealist civilization. Although this announcement was issued by the Watchers, many true devotees found it utterly inconceivable. They dismissed all accusations against Zoklin, resolute in their determination to follow the departed prophet. Though their numbers were few, Collectively, they constituted a formidable force. As for Zoclin's whereabouts, they remained shrouded in mystery. Some speculate that he, disheartened by the chaotic galaxy, chose to live in seclusion. Others believe he foresaw an impending crisis and set out to seek a solution to the looming threat. Regardless, Zoclin's departure is an undeniable truth. Despite attempts to locate him, all efforts culminated in naught. This matter, of profound significance to the idealist civilization, elicited little reaction within the materialist civilization. A handful of students who had chosen Zoclin as the subject of their thesis faced unfortunate setbacks, necessitating a sudden shift in their research focus. Currently, the prevailing topic of discourse in the materialist civilization revolves around the audacious individual who transferred his consciousness into a mechanical body. After all, the act of completely discarding one's corporeal form does indeed appear rather preposterous. Even those who have replaced over 80% of their bodies with prosthetics cannot fathom such a scenario. Some regard this as a monumental leap towards the elevation of civilization, while others contend that the efficiency derived from prosthetics and robotics suffices, rendering such a philosophically perilous approach unnecessary. The discussions surrounding this matter seem poised to become the foremost topic under the aegis of the awakening empire. However, have you ever noticed that no lost civilization appears to have adopted such a method? Indeed, upon reflection, even the wanderers have opted for prosthetics. Does this not suggest that this path may ultimately be untenable? It is difficult to ascertain, yet we must forge our own path. Standing upon the shoulders of giants is admirable, yet it may also confine us to perpetual dependency on the influence of others. Several young individuals are voicing their perspectives online. Yet, alongside these reasonable discussions, a few conspiracy theories are quietly emerging. Humans have an innate tendency to engage in divergent thinking, weaving together a chain of events that they themselves come to believe. The most prevalent conspiracy theory posits that spies from the mechanical civilization have infiltrated their ranks, aiming to compel everyone to adopt mechanical bodies, subsequently controlling them with a potent virus. As for how many individuals harboring a fear of machinery will subscribe to this notion, that remains to be seen. As time once again flows, amid the tranquility before the storm, various civilizations strive to elevate themselves, while the two lost empires, once expanded and now shrouded in silence, finally exhibit signs of movement. Firstly, their vassal civilizations have taken the initiative to declare war. Perhaps it is mere coincidence that both the Watchers and the Wayfarers each possess 5 vassal civilizations. Initially, the Wayfarers had only 4, but after incorporating the criminal consortium known as the Core Union, their number also reached 5. This small-scale conflict among the vassals surprisingly unfolded with an eerie sense of ritual. As if preordained, the strong faced the strong, and the weak faced the weak, with each participant seemingly matched against an equal adversary. While the various civilizations observed this evenly matched warfare, puzzled by its purpose, both the Watchers and the Wayfarers received intelligence. They dispatched an envoy to each young civilization, opting for a notably formal approach rather than the usual methods of signal broadcasting. These envoys explicitly articulated the ancient enmity that existed between them, promising lavish rewards for those who joined their ranks, and severe punishment for those who opposed them. Despite the allure of the rewards, the vast majority of civilizations remained clear-minded in their choice, opting not to align with either side, harboring no interest in the grievances of the two lost empires. However, a handful of civilizations perceived an opportunity, each choosing to align with the faction they favored, hoping to partake in the spoils of this ancient rivalry. While victors could potentially soar to great heights with substantial rewards, the cost of failure was too great for them to bear. Thus, at the moment of their commitment, they prepared for total war. In stark contrast, there existed one civilization that made a choice utterly divergent from all others. You shall all bow before us. When the envoy of the Watchers arrived at this civilization, he was met with an option he had never contemplated. He even wondered if his translator had malfunctioned, and he proceeded to switch to several new devices to confirm the meaning of the stone entity's declaration. Do you mean that you will not join either side? The envoy attempted to comprehend this civilization's choice, but the stone being reiterated, no. What we mean is that you will all become our defeated foes. At that moment, the envoy was utterly convinced that the translator was functioning correctly. This civilization had chosen to declare war on both lost empires. The individual making this unexpected decision hailed from a stony civilization, a form of silicon-based life. Such life forms are indeed rare within the galaxy, initially sparking curiosity and enthusiasm among many civilizations. However, this initial exuberance quickly waned, and these once enthusiastic civilizations announced a cessation of relations with the stone entity, proposing a united sanction against it. The reason soon spread throughout the galaxy. It was because this stone civilization was somewhat foolish. It may not be entirely accurate to label them as foolish. Rather, it is a profound sense of confidence, arrogance, and a desire for expansion that sustains their civilizational interactions. They bear a striking resemblance to the once dominant race of Puritan pigeons that wreaked havoc across the galaxy, yet there are notable distinctions. The most evident difference is that the pigeons at least possessed a degree of self-awareness regarding their capabilities. When faced with adversaries of overwhelming strength, they would refrain from provoking them, contenting themselves with mere verbal sparring. In stark contrast, This civilization of stone beings is perpetually unafraid. Their most astonishing act was simultaneously declaring war on over 20 civilizations, including the silent Lost Empire. This unwavering self-assurance has even become a legendary tale within the galaxy, as chronicled in the Galactic World Records, where they hold an unmatched record for the most civilizations declared war upon by a single interstellar nation. The sole reason for their continued existence lies in the anticipation of what amusing antics they might conjure next. In truth, there are better choices available. Abstaining from alignment with either side would be quite commendable, mused the envoy as he earnestly endeavored to persuade the stone leader before him. As a representative, he considered himself seasoned and worldly, capable of understanding the caution exhibited by emerging civilizations. He had anticipated their reluctance to commit to either faction. However, this unexpected choice filled him with a sense of wonder at the galaxy's vibrant tapestry, validating the years he had spent in existence. Enough said. If I command you to bow, then bow you shall. The stone being maintained its confident demeanor, prompting the envoy to sigh repeatedly as he prepared to relay the situation back to the Watchers. Before departing, he noticed the traveler's vessel arriving at the scene. Even during this period of military preparation, despite their historical enmity, they would refrain from acts of aggression against one another. Yet, after brushing past the envoy from the travelers, the Watcher's representative could not suppress a laugh, already envisioning the expression that would soon adorn the synthetic being's face. Thus, it wasn't long before the galactic civilizations became aware of the stone being's unexpected choice. They truly are remarkable, exclaimed Blanding within the trade station of Karibo. Their conflict with the devouring swarm had temporarily subsided due to the arrival of an envoy from the Lost Empire. Even this voracious swarm, known for their insatiable consumption of biological matter, seemed to recognize the peculiarities of the galactic situation, opting to withdraw from overt aggression. The trade station where Blanding resided, being in close proximity to the Guardians, faced no harassment from the swarm. However, upon hearing of the stone civilization's decision, he experienced a blend of surprise and inevitability. As a corporation of the universe, they had indeed attempted to engage in trade with these oblivious stone beings, the outcome of which was predictably disastrous, as Karibo itself had been designated as one of their war targets. However, before they could take action, the group of stone beings was left with nothing but a lone mother star, having failed to seize any resources. Yet, following their marvel, a sense of foreboding regarding the future ensued. This group of stone beings appeared to be the last of their kind. It seemed that all young civilizations within the galaxy had received invitations to join the conflict from the Watchers and the Wanderers. Even the Lost Empire would require some pawns to witness the resolution of their long-standing grievances, would they not? What outcomes might this war yield? Victory or defeat? Or perhaps mutual destruction? Would we glean any rewards from it? Brining gazed at the increasingly dim star map, sighing repeatedly, before finally casting his eyes toward the mechanical Lost Empire nestled in a corner of the map, enviously murmuring to himself, "Ah, the Lost Empire is indeed fortunate, doing nothing but watching the tempest of the galaxy unfold. How I wish we possessed such power." Meanwhile, Li Wenyuan, who was still diligently exploring the ruins, remained oblivious to the perceptions others held of him. A considerable amount of time had passed since he had issued the task of locating the image objects. Yet there had been no fruitful discoveries. It seemed that all traces of this suspected threat had been thoroughly eradicated from the galaxy, leaving behind scant clues. However, the ancient wanderers he had stationed in the infinite lighthouse ring world were advancing at a pace he could scarcely comprehend. The efficiency bestowed upon them by their mechanical forms was indeed unparalleled. As they tirelessly endeavored to restore their former homeland, they were also continuously assembling new companions. Unlike biological beings, they did not require conventional reproduction. The sole complexity in the increase of their numbers lay in the construction of their cognitive networks, which determined the essence of their souls. Although their population still lagged significantly behind that of typical interstellar civilizations, their extraordinary production efficiency had enabled them to assemble a formidable fleet, reminiscent of the Wanderers yet imbued with a more archaic elegance. Their memories of knowledge remained vivid in their minds. Given time, perhaps not too long, they would supplant the current Wanderers and emerge as a true, awakened empire. As for old grievances, a leader among the ancient Wanderers had already sensed the impending events in the galaxy, yet this hatred had now dulled. Betrayed by their kin, they were solely focused on pursuing the footsteps of the Harbingers. Nevertheless, their newly arisen brethren retained a curiosity about their past. Even though those histories had become part of their memories, they still yearned to hear the tales of antiquity. That was a time long gone, when the galaxy thrived under the great deeds of the Harbingers. We prided ourselves on being the most legitimate heirs of the Harbingers, even adopting a name for ourselves that mirrored their title. Yet, back then, another group also claimed to be the inheritors of the Harbingers, and, coincidentally, referred to themselves as such. Being still young, we naturally could not tolerate such usurpation. Thus, the Great War erupted. Each of us yearned to engage in a conflict that would ultimately conclude all wars, preserving the celestial paradise left by the Harbingers. I suspect that by now, they have perhaps forgotten the reasons behind it all, only aware of their long-standing enmity. Nevertheless, we still possess a unique nomenclature for this conflict. the War of Heaven. Li Wenyuan elucidated the impending events in the galaxy to Grey Wind, drawing upon the memories extracted from the ancient travelers. At this moment, the star map revealed that the regions representing the Watchers and the Travelers had quietly turned crimson. The animosity between these two ancient civilizations had been officially ignited. Chapter 94. Minor Skirmishes. Is this the war between the Lost Empires? Blaney gazed at the star systems embroiled in conflict, an indescribable expression gracing his features. The tempest, long brewing beneath ominous clouds, had finally unleashed its wrath. The initial clash between the two lost empires occurred in the home system of the Stone People civilization. In response to this civilization's audacious claims of subjugation, both the Watchers and the Travelers dispatched small fleets to witness how they intended to enforce their dominion. Consequently, the two lost empires engaged directly in battle within the star system. The pitiful little fleets of the Stone People were swiftly dispatched amidst the chaos. Treated as mere debris on the battlefield, the star base, which had asserted sovereignty over the system, changed hands repeatedly during the skirmish, never returning to the Stone People's control. Their sole solace lay in the fact that their home planet was situated far from the fray, likely spared from errant beams of energy hurtling toward them. Initially, only small fleets from the two lost empires had arrived, comprising a handful of frigates and a battlecruiser designated for oversight. However, once these fleets exchanged fire, they began to call for reinforcements, rapidly escalating the conflict. The regions once deemed critical by the Watchers and the Travelers, where a direct confrontation was anticipated, instead remained surprisingly tranquil. Meanwhile, their fleets continuously jumped to the remote outskirts of the galaxy, engaging in combat within the home system of the Stone People. As fellow lost empires, they naturally devised strategies to guard against sudden assaults on their jump engines. Within each star system under their control, at least one superluminal suppressor was stationed. The primary function of this apparatus was to disrupt the consistent spacetime required for jump engine transitions, preventing external foes from directly infiltrating their core territories with such stealthy tactics. Even when utilizing jump engines, intruders could only approach the periphery of their borders. Thereafter, they would still need to navigate through conventional hyperspace travel to enter their systems. This significantly diminished the threat level, granting them ample time to respond to hostile actions. However, the anticipated battlegrounds failed to witness the expected warfare. Instead, large-scale hostilities erupted in an obscure location. Has the number of conflicts increased? Are the Watchers and the Travelers prepared to settle their differences there? Blaine's subordinates gazed at the images displayed on the electronic screen, their expressions reflecting incredulity at the vast fleets before them. In the location where two fallen empires ignited a cataclysmic conflict, even the most intrepid adventurers dared not venture forth to clandestinely capture footage. Civilizations could only rely on their respective observational methods to glean insights. However, such approaches rendered images far less vivid than first-hand resources. There had long been interstellar tycoons offering bounties for daredevils capable of providing live broadcasts, yet thus far, no one had undertaken this perilous task. Even the indistinct visuals were sufficient to discern the sheer magnitude of these colossal fleets. Many civilizations calculated the scale of the fleets participating in this war, and, upon comparing their own strengths, were disheartened to discover that even this minor skirmish was enough to obliterate them. At this moment, the fleets arriving at the home system of the Stone Man civilization numbered in the hundreds, with Titans having also joined the fray, making it increasingly difficult to classify this as merely a minor battle. The Guardian fleets, primarily powered by psychic abilities, exhibited a strength that surpassed all expectations in the theater of war. Their shields, enhanced by psychic energy and Zeroth technology, provided far superior protection compared to those of standard civilizations, rendering even the Wanderers somewhat inferior in this regard. Amidst the relentless bombardment of countless warships, the Wanderer fleet, with its relatively weaker defenses, suffered significantly greater losses. Nonetheless, the Wanderers possessed advantages over the Guardians. Eschewing robotics, the Guardian fleets did not utilize ships for combat, relying instead on powerful psychic entities for control. In contrast, the Wanderers had conducted extensive research into unmanned warfare, equipping each of their vessels with intelligent combat systems and efficient fleet intelligence for space warfare. Nevertheless, despite these advantages, the Wanderers incurred losses far exceeding those of the Guardians. Following their pact with entities from the virtual realm, the Guardians' combat prowess ascended to unprecedented heights. They developed unique combat devices known as foresight interfaces, capable of predicting future events to a certain extent. Though imprecise and fleeting, these devices significantly mitigated their losses. After deploying an equal number of fleets, the Wanderer forces within this star system began to exhibit signs of decline. It was difficult to fathom that two factions, once evenly matched in ancient times, could so swiftly determine a victor. Driven to desperation, the Wanderers were compelled to take the initiative, launching an assault on the Guardians' homeland. A multitude of warships jumped to the border positions and proceeded towards the Guardian space bastions, aiming to swiftly establish a foothold. For these two fallen empires, the efficacy of infiltration was minimal. Only direct warfare held paramount importance. The Guardians' unique psychic sensing capabilities could detect any spies, thereby thwarting any attempts at infiltration on their planets. Conversely, the Wanderers possessed their own strategies. Their advanced mechanical augmentations and lie detection devices proved unparalleled in addressing espionage issues. Thus, the confrontation in this celestial battle is, in essence, a contest of production capabilities among the factions. However, the Guardians, now bound by a pact with the virtual realm, exhibit an absurdly high production capacity. In the calm before the storm, their assembled fleet far exceeds that of the Wanderers. Consequently, despite the apparent normalcy perceived by various civilizations, the Wanderers have begun to grasp the gravity of the situation internally. Did our intelligence fail us? How can their fleet replenish so swiftly? A commander of the Wanderers gazes at the damage report, his expression far from favorable. Having long languished in a state of degradation, he never anticipated that his inaugural battle upon awakening would culminate in defeat. The minor skirmish that transpired in the home system of the Stone People had seemingly concluded, with various civilizations believing it to be a withdrawal. In reality, it was the Wanderer fleet commander who first issued the emergency jump order. The Guardian fleet, unable to annihilate their adversaries, also retreated, yet they purposefully reappeared in certain star systems, seemingly engaging in guerrilla operations to hunt down isolated Wanderer fleets. Following their departure, the Stone People, initially relieved, were soon besieged by a multitude of ships from other civilizations. Among them were numerous adventurers, yet more were official personnel. They incessantly dismantled and transported the remnants of the fleet within this star system, either to sell or to uncover lost secrets through research. This process naturally led to some friction, as the fleetless Stone People could only await the completion of these activities, helplessly watching as the remnants of their warships were carted away, piece by piece, until none remained. Over time, the entire star system resembled a locust-swept landscape, devoid of anything but planets. Even the asteroid belt was insidiously removed, making it hard to fathom that a fierce battle had once erupted here. However, having regained control of the stellar base, the Stone People resumed their confident demeanor, completely oblivious to their previous declarations of war against two lost empires. The commanders of the Wanderers began to fret over the balance of victory in this celestial conflict, perplexed as to why their erstwhile evenly matched rivals had grown stronger than themselves over the ages. The fleet that had tentatively probed the borders of the Guardians had lost contact, yet they were indifferent to the fate of this fleet, as it had merely served as bait. Ultimately, it was an intelligence officer who discerned a hint of insight from the galactic data they had deemed trivial, relaying this information to the high-ranking rulers. The end of the cycle? This peculiar realm appears to provide formidable support to that group of idealistic fools. According to the exiled prophet Zaklon, the Watchers have indeed forged a pact with this entity, exchanging it for unimaginable blessings. Such a notion is profoundly idealistic. However, if this is indeed the case, the records concerning the end of reincarnation suggest that their time is critically limited. Therefore, let us defend. For as long as we can postpone the moment of their reckoning, that shall signify our triumph. When the time arrives, we too may utilize this galaxy to fulfill our ambitions. The high-ranking officials swiftly reached a decision, transitioning into a defensive mode. Engaging in combat on their own territory affords them a considerable advantage. Moreover, to buy time, they sporadically deployed harassment fleets to roam the galaxy, aiming to distract the Watchers' forces. In response, the Watchers intensified their offensive, not solely to obliterate this ancient adversary that has persistently opposed them, but also because they comprehend the urgency of time. Amidst this turmoil, a sinister thought, born from the depths of human hearts, began to take shape. High Priest, what purpose does the colossal structure we have recently commenced serve? In the celestial throne room, a believer inquired about the grand edifice near the sacred site. It is a machine designed to extract the power of the void. The rifts left by the harbingers around the sanctuary enable us to effortlessly draw immense amounts of spiritual energy from it. With this power, we can ascend into another realm. Thus, keeping pace with the harbingers, the high priest responded in a soothing tone, seemingly assuaging the believer's concerns. Yet, the believer's eyes remained rife with profound unease. This was an inspiration bestowed by the spiritual energy, and furthermore, the prophecy uttered by Zaklon before his departure instilled great fear within him. High Priest. The ring sought to inquire further, but was abruptly interrupted by the High Priest. This is but the whisperings of the Dark God's followers, mere nonsensical ramblings of the ring. Your faith lacks conviction. As punishment, you shall copy the revelation 100 times. The High Priest's voice was notably flat, causing the believer to shudder and depart with his head bowed. Once the temple was devoid of any presence, the High Priest began to mutter to himself. The potent spiritual energy cloaked all others from perceiving him, rendering it impossible for any connection to discern his thoughts. However, should someone be present in flesh and bone, straining to listen, they might hear him seemingly conversing with some entity, whose essence bore a striking resemblance to the void. End of chapter 95. The hatchery, the primary fleet of the Watchers, seemed to be engaged in an offensive against the borders of the Wayfarers. Yet under the steadfast policy of defense, they could not make headway against the entrenched fortifications within those star systems. Observing civilizations believed they could avoid this murky quagmire. Yet they had not anticipated that trouble would come knocking at their door. The wayfarers persistently employed various ambiguous fleet signals to traverse the galaxy, some genuine, others false, effectively dispersing a portion of the Watcher's fleet. Yet, at times, when the marauding fleets are apprehended, the star systems they inhabit inevitably erupt into fierce conflicts. The first to suffer was the Karibo, as one of their dispersed trade stations found itself unfortunate enough to be caught in the crossfire of two fallen empires. Despite the valiant efforts of their escort fleets, the resultant shockwaves from the skirmish still reached them. For instance, a stray shot from a battlecruiser's main cannon obliterated the trade station's core, leaving behind a horde of battered ships fleeing in disarray. While other civilizations mocked Karibo, they soon discovered that similar misfortunes had befallen their own realms. The elusive wanderers, utilizing jump engines, appeared to deliberately position their fleets within the borders of other nations, creating chaos to alleviate the assault pressure on the Watchers. Meanwhile, the vassal civilizations that had sworn allegiance became increasingly fervent in their skirmishes, particularly the Watchers, who saw a glimmer of hope in the prospect of victory. With the current advantageous circumstances, they were eager to contribute by vanquishing the vassals of their adversaries. Conversely, the vassal civilizations of the Wanderers recognized the defensive posture of their overlords, all opting for a defensive stance, seemingly awaiting the clarion call for a counteroffensive. Within the confines of the Spark Alliance, a civilization known for its benevolence towards indigenous beings, misfortune also struck due to the Wanderers' unpredictability. A disguised fleet of Wanderers engaged in battle with the Watchers in one of their star systems, leaving all space facilities utterly devastated, making reconstruction exceedingly troublesome. Yet, the troubles did not end there. It was a case of when the city gates catch fire, the fish in the moat suffer. I had thought we were far removed from the two fallen empires, only to find ourselves caught in the tumult. A scientist from the Spark Alliance ventured into the warring star system, diligently analyzing the extent of the damage. Coincidentally, this conflict occurred within a nature reserve system, and there was hope that the local wildlife had remained unaffected. Another scientist gazed mournfully at the ravaged nature reserve, lamenting the destruction wrought by the two fallen empires. As a civilization devoted to aiding indigenous life, the Spark Alliance took great care in safeguarding various unawakened native creatures. They not only established nature reserve systems, but also continually advocated for interstellar civilizations to provide a measure of survival space for these unawakened animals. Reminiscent of an interstellar wildlife protection organization, their passionate endeavors captured the attention of observers, resulting in a considerable influx of resources. These resources were utilized to create the very nature reserve system before them. This particular star system was extraordinary upon discovery. The Spark Alliance found 5 habitable planets teeming with animal life. Such a fortuitous occurrence is rare indeed. Most civilizations would have promptly settled these 5 free colonies. However, the Spark Alliance perceived this as a miraculous gift from the heavens. How incredible it was to have 5 habitable planets within a single star system. Thus, they promptly resolved to designate this area as a nature reserve and dispatched a substantial fleet of patrol vessels to safeguard it from poachers who might threaten its ecological stability. This decision provoked considerable dissatisfaction among the civilized world, which deemed it an extravagant endeavor. They believed that if the 5 colonies were managed effectively, they could yield immense benefits to civilization within decades. Consequently, numerous civilizations had previously harbored intentions towards this region, employing threats or negotiations. Yet none succeeded in dissuading the Fireseed Alliance from its commitment to protect it. However, just recently, this location became a battleground for the Watchers and the Wayfarers. It was all over. The devastation was complete. I had already witnessed a conspicuous crater on the planet of the 5th Nature Reserve. It was undoubtedly struck by the weaponry of one of their warships. Such an event would precipitate significant upheaval in the planet's ecology. Following a mass extinction, countless unique species would vanish. The Fireseed Alliance's expert in biology lamented the visible crater and noted the remnants of conflict on several other nature reserve planets as well. Clearly, the fighting here was intense and had likely devolved into chaotic warfare, devoid of order, focused solely on the slaughter of immediate adversaries. Alas, this turmoil brought suffering to the indigenous species, as this mass extinction would necessitate a restart for many evolved beings. Sighing, they hoped to expedite ecological restoration, wishing fervently that future wars would spare this locale. Some attempted to counsel the biologist, yet he could not help but sigh in sympathy for the plight of the native species. Thus, they first approached the nearest nature reserve planet, preparing to address the catastrophe. However, upon examining the situation, they discovered something amiss. Strangely, despite the colossal external force that should have wrought devastation, where tsunamis and earthquakes were commonplace, everything appeared eerily tranquil. The entire nature reserve planet seemed undisturbed. The creatures roamed leisurely across the plains, occasionally grazing on the grass, living quite contentedly. Nothing seemed unusual. The visible crater appeared almost illusory, leaving no discernible impact on the planet. One scientist promptly exclaimed, "Let us investigate the crater." Their spacecraft swiftly arrived at the site of impact, where the rock layers had suffered immense destruction, fissures extending deep within, occasionally shedding fragments with the gentle breeze. Yet the scientists sensed something was amiss. They observed that the cracks were unnaturally expanding inward, as if something beneath the rock layers was stirring, yearning to break free. Deploy the drones and evacuate immediately. Also, alert others in the galaxy to vacate this system. The leader among this cohort of scientists decisively distanced himself from the planet, leaving behind only drones for observation. Curiosity about the universe is an innate gift of living beings, particularly pronounced in scientists. Logically, they ought to have remained in place, quietly awaiting the unfolding spectacle. However, an instinctual warning coursed through their very beings, a sensation of imminent peril akin to that of a mortal enemy, compelling them to flee. It was evident that something terrifying lurked beneath the planet's surface, a primal instinct sufficient to drive their bodies away. Thus, the ships of the Coalition of Embers, stationed in this nature reserve star system, swiftly retreated, leaving only the drones on the various protected planets to record the unfolding events. As fissures in the vast crater of the planet multiplied and widened, the secrets buried within finally unveiled themselves to the Coalition. A small segment of the rocky wall crumbled, revealing a dark void behind it. It appeared as though the crust of this planet was hollow, with depths unseen. Shortly thereafter, a massive fleshy pillar, reminiscent of an enlarged ant's antenna, emerged cautiously from the abyss, only to retract into the darkness. At that moment, a transformation erupted. Countless waves of what seemed to be flesh and blood surged forth from the void, swiftly spreading in all directions. Everything in their path was rapidly assimilated into their being. Not only here, but tremors began to ripple throughout other regions of the planet, where fissures in the surface expelled noxious gases, soon followed by the same tide of flesh and blood. Numerous such fissures continued to emerge, quickly enveloping the entire planet in these living, parasitic entities, growing ever thicker. Above this mass of biological corruption, large structures resembling buildings, each serving distinct functions, began to sprout, hinting at the birth of new life forms within. The scene appeared bizarre, yet possessed a peculiar aesthetic of perfect biological evolution. Ultimately, to the astonishment of the Coalition, all other protected planets transformed into this grotesque tableau, resembling hatcheries entirely reformed by a swarm of parasitic life forms. While they were in shock, far away on Earth, Li Wenyuan shared their astonishment. He received a unique signal, one he was well acquainted with from his prolonged excavations of human relics, indicating that something left by humanity had been reactivated. Furthermore, a star system on his star map was pulsating with intense light, seemingly urging him to hasten towards it. Without hesitation, and even before he could summon Grey Wind, he commanded a research vessel to warp to the location, simultaneously preparing his fleet for battle. He sensed that this situation was peculiar. He had never encountered a signal from a single location that could provoke such a commotion. As the warp wave flickered and passed, the research vessel arrived at its destination, revealing the sights within the star system. In this vast cosmic expanse, there exist numerous grotesque colossal beings, rendering the individuals of the predatory swarms akin to mere children in comparison, lacking the terror that these creatures embody. Furthermore, aside from the gaseous giants, every celestial body here has been transformed by a layer of what appears to be a living biological entity, rendering it inhospitable to any form of life other than this peculiar existence. The immense creatures drifting through the void of space sensed the presence of an intruder and immediately exhibited aggressive postures, as if intent on overwhelming and tearing apart the diminutive research vessel. Yet, in the next moment, their fearsome movements ceased abruptly, as if they had received a command. Upon arriving in this realm, Li Wenyuan intercepted a message left by humanity. Warning, please do not enter the hatchery without authorization. If you must enter, ensure you carry items that can verify your identity. Did you not hear? This is indeed a hatchery. If you do not depart, you shall face consequences. Well, if you choose to remain at this point, it seems you have some form of assurance. I pity my little insects. Indeed, I am an expert. My name is self-evident, no? Oh, I see. Then refer to me as the expert. What resides here is a collection of beings from beyond the Milky Way. Surprising. Isn't it? These formidable entities can even traverse subspace, journeying through the distant, frigid void between galaxies to arrive here. Initially, we were curious about their intentions. Thus we observed them without interference for a time. However, we soon discovered their aggressive nature. From the moment they entered the Milky Way, they have been voraciously consuming and expanding, seemingly unwilling to relent until they have devoured the entire galaxy. Consequently, we took measures to educate them, casting those unwilling to heed our teachings back into subspace, leaving behind a small group that embraced our guidance. Through dialogue, we learned that they had been driven here by even more terrifying beings. We had not anticipated the existence of such intriguing entities beyond the Milky Way. Perhaps in the future, we might engage in a dialogue to exchange thoughts. I digress. I empathize with their tragic plight, and thus I wish to explore the possibility of cultivating this remaining group into a civilization, relocating them to the hatchery system. Here, 5 habitable planets have been artificially modified by us, and I hope no unfortunate souls will attempt colonization in this place. End of chapter 96. The Lost Empire of the Hive Hatchery? The name of this peculiar star system intrigued Li Wenyuan. Humanity truly has a penchant for innovation, even desiring to nurture entities from beyond the Milky Way. From the outcomes, it seems they have succeeded, for within this star system, numerous giant space creatures drift, appearing to be under control. Perhaps due to Li Wenyuan's unique presence, these celestial behemoths refrained from attacking him, instead exuding an air of docility. Upon his entry into the star system, the fearsome visages of the colossal beasts were likely merely a response to his presence. Furthermore, the hatching planets, teeming with biological infestations, did not manifest a chaotic state. The gigantic living structures composed of biomass possessed distinct functions, although they appeared quite bizarre compared to conventional organic civilizations. This might represent a unique mode of civilization exclusive to these beings. If that is the case, could communication with them be possible? Li Wenyuan felt a spark of curiosity. After all, according to the accounts left by humanity, this hatching star system was constructed to facilitate the emergence of civilization among these extraterrestrial visitors. Given the current circumstances, it seemed reasonable to assume that communication was indeed feasible. As anticipated, he soon received a rather peculiar signal fluctuation. Unlike the conventional forms of communication employed by typical civilizations, this group of extraterrestrial visitors utilized psychic signals, which could not be deciphered without a certain level of technological prowess. However, it was evident that Li Wenyuan was not among those unable to comprehend their message. The psychic signal receiver swiftly elucidated the contents of their transmission. Are you humans? I sense a familiar presence. We have not ventured out in a long time. Can we return home now? The initial inquiry from these extraterrestrial beings took Li Wenyuan by surprise. He had not expected them to immediately ask about returning home. Before he could respond, they continued transmitting psychic signals. Do you have food? We have not eaten in a long time. We are very hungry. I can trade. We have. The signal was momentarily interrupted, as if they were assessing what they possessed for barter. Shortly thereafter, another message followed. We only have warriors, but they are formidable. Could we exchange them for some food? Perhaps it was merely a fleeting impression, but Li Wenyuan discerned an undertone of desperation and trepidation within their words. The fearsome beasts, drifting aimlessly through space, even displayed a remarkably human-like gesture by flipping onto their backs, appearing as if they had succumbed to starvation. It seemed that humanity's initial teachings had been quite effective. He recalled the descriptions of these extraterrestrial visitors from the remnants of information. It was difficult to fathom what treatment they had endured to transform from a state of relentless consumption and expansion into their current humiliated condition. They even understood the concept of trade, offering something in exchange rather than arrogantly demanding a return. Nevertheless, with prudence in mind, Li Wenyuan opted to pose a few questions before sealing off all hyperspace routes surrounding the hatching star system with his fleet. Who are you? We are the Presolents. The survivors. We were pursued here by hunters. We seek sustenance and wish to escape into the dark crevices of the cosmos, struggling to survive. However, humans educated me, promising to take us home. You are not humans, yet you bear their essence. It seems the humans are no longer here. Have they gone in search of our homeland? The group of extraterrestrial visitors, self-identified as the Presolents, appears to possess a unique perceptual ability, enabling them to discern that humanity has vacated this galaxy. However, rather than reverting to their former predatory nature, they seem to harbor a faint hope, becoming increasingly docile, as if anticipating the day when humanity might return to rescue them. Their narrative inspired Li Wenyuan with a new notion. Could it be that humanity, having exhausted their amusements within the galaxy, has ventured forth to wreak havoc upon other star systems? He found this notion plausible, based on his current understanding of humanity's penchant for diversion. It was entirely possible that they had indeed embarked on such a course of action. If that were the case, why had they not resolved the threats they encountered before their departure? He couldn't help but internally scoff at this thought. After all, given the present circumstances, it appeared that humanity had only addressed a fraction of the unknown peril, or perhaps had not addressed it at all, before vanishing without a trace. Nevertheless, he endeavored to envision a more noble conclusion for humanity, perhaps one where they perished alongside the threat, continually convincing himself that this was the true narrative of human history. He hoped it would not culminate in some sort of galactic graduation examination. Shaking his head, Li Wenyuan resumed his inquiries with the survivors. Why are you hiding here? Because waiting is a tedious affair. We hope that one day we will awaken and return home, but we have been roused too soon. What do you intend to do in the future? We wish to cultivate the land. We do not want to suffer from hunger, but we do not know how to proceed. Can you assist us? At the conclusion of their plea, Li Wenyuan glimpsed the source of the signal, a colossal creature concealed within the incubation planet. This creature appeared to be the true sovereign of the Presolents, existing within a collective consciousness akin to that of a beehive. The hidden creature was, in fact, the queen of this group of Presolents. She seemed to have been educated by humanity to an admirable degree, understanding that agriculture was of paramount importance, rather than perpetual expansion. In light of his desire to preserve humanity's legacy, Li Wenyuan acquiesced to their requests and began by supplying them with sustenance, for they appeared on the brink of starvation. Thank you. Thank you. The Presolent Queen expressed her gratitude through the signal, and the entire incubation facility seemed to resonate with joy. After some time, the galactic civilizations suddenly realized that a portion of the Ember Alliance's territory was missing, now occupied by a civilization known as the Presolans. Upon further examination, they discovered that this area was the previously coveted natural reserve galaxy, boasting 5 habitable planets. Initially, they suspected that this unknown Presolan civilization had conquered the Ember Alliance's territory. But the Ember Alliance swiftly provided clarification, presenting footage depicting how the biological incursion had emerged from within the planet, subsequently transforming its very essence. The myriad civilizations were astounded to realize that the planets they regarded as rare treasures concealed such terrifying secrets within. Simultaneously, they expressed relief that the Fireseed Alliance had not succumbed to pressure and relinquished this star system, for had they been in that position, they would have colonized it at the first opportunity. Once the secrets hidden within these planets were unleashed, the populations residing on their surfaces would evaporate into thin air, delivering a devastating blow that could render them irreparably weakened. While they marveled at the good fortune of the Fireseed Alliance, they were also intensely curious about the suddenly emerging Presolan civilization. However, their attempts at communication proved fruitless, as the beings of Presolan communicated through signals that were beyond their comprehension. Ultimately, it was the idealist civilization, with its profound understanding of psychic energy, that discerned these incomprehensible signals as psychic signals, successfully establishing contact with the Presolan. Consequently, the star charts were updated with new annotations regarding Presolan. Presolan, a hive-minded civilization, seemingly birthed long ago but recently awakened, adheres to pacifism and shows no interest in expansion. They have a fondness for food, which can be used as a medium for trade with them. This was the initial annotation, and the many civilizations failed to grasp the true nature of this hive-minded existence. It was not until the ongoing war between the Watchers and the Wayfarers saw a guerrilla fleet from each go missing within the Presolan's home system incubation site that they began to recognize that this hive-minded civilization differed markedly from the ordinary hive civilizations within the galaxy. After extensive observation and confirmation, they ultimately discovered that the Presolan's colossal space beasts possessed the formidable power to annihilate the fleets of the Lost Empire. Despite being biological entities, they could withstand the main cannons of battleships with their flesh, leaving them in disbelief that any organism could evolve to such a terrifying degree. This revelation provided immense motivation to those who steadfastly believed that genetic technology could elevate civilizations. They shifted their research focus to the Presolan, striving to make it the pinnacle of their endeavors. Through numerous discussions and debates, the annotations on Presolan underwent several revisions before the civilizations finally settled on a definitive version. Presolan, Survivor. Possessing an unfathomable ancient history and formidable strength. Adhering to pacifism, they have a particular fondness for food, which serves as an excellent means to win their favor. Special note, Hive Lost Empire, Chapter 97. Beyond the virtual realm, the news of the discovery of the Hive Lost Empire became a significant event within the galaxy. As the civilizations calculated, they realized that the number of lost empires had escalated from the initial 4 to 7. Each lost empire appeared to possess its own unique characteristics, alongside technologies and strengths that were unimaginable to ordinary civilizations. Given the traits of galactic civilizations, many speculated whether there were still other lost empires yet to be uncovered. However, this matter remains distant from them. Their immediate concern lies within the conflicts among the lost empires. The war between the Watchers and the Wanderers shows no signs of abating. Although the Watchers maintain an overall advantage over the Wanderers, the latter, steadfast in their territories, exhibit remarkable resilience. Unlike the Watcher fleets, which require the guidance of psychics, the Wanderers' unmanned fleets suffer casualties without remorse. Even if they lose a few vessels in exchange for one, the Wanderers deem it a worthwhile trade. As nurturing psychics is a time-consuming endeavor, and those born with innate abilities are ultimately a rare breed. Consequently, it comes as no surprise that the Watchers have begun to ease their engagement frequency. Each warship has become exceedingly cautious and more attentive to survival. This shift has led to a paradoxical situation. Although the frequency of skirmishes has diminished, their durations have considerably lengthened. With agile warships capable of engaging for several days within a single star system, the Wanderers find delight in this development, as their intention was to prolong the conflict. Yet, the Watchers remain unexpectedly composed, exhibiting no signs of haste, as if they possess a well-formed strategy. At this juncture, the sanctuaries of the Watchers appear to have lost their originally lofty and sacred demeanor, once strictly prohibiting any other civilization from colonizing the sanctuaries. The Watchers seem to disregard their significance, as colossal structures centered around these sacred worlds rise slowly around them. Even the once pure treasures that have transformed into toxic planets reflect this disregard, as if the sanctity of the environment matters little compared to their unique locations. The Great Priest has named this monumental architecture the Virtual Realm Siphon. By emulating the remnants left by the Harbingers upon the sanctuaries, they have constructed this giant device, capable of amplifying the virtual rifts created by the Harbingers, thereby accelerating the extraction of virtual energy. As the Great Priest, would he be unaware of the costs associated with forging contracts with entities from the virtual realm? Of course, he is aware, yet he feels assured of victory. To that end, he does not hesitate to incite emotional turmoil among his followers through the destruction of the sanctuaries, harnessing that energy to achieve his objectives. What is the progress of the construction? It is already over halfway complete, with some structures beginning to operate, drawing a continuous stream of psychic energy from the virtual realm into our universe. Listening to the responses from the followers through the psychic link, the great priest nods, then falls silent once more. Lately, he has often found himself in such a state. However, people assume he is mourning the departure of the prophet. After all, everyone knows he was a friend of the now disgraced prophet Zachlon, and with benevolent speculation, the followers believe he laments his inability to prevent Zachlon from being swayed by the malevolent deity. The great priest murmurs to himself, his internal psychic energy fluctuating like never before, only to quickly settle. If anyone were present, they would surely be astonished, for his spiritual prowess had ascended to an unprecedented level, one that no individual in the annals of the Watcher's recorded history had ever attained. Legends whisper that such a magnitude of power can whimsically sway the virtual realm. However, the high priest comprehended that he was still far from that mark. To reach the stature of the Harbinger, he must harness every ounce of energy from the virtual domain, even if it necessitates an exorbitant sacrifice. There would be no missteps. I have never faltered before, and this time shall be no different. Perhaps others cannot fathom this, yet they must comply. With the colossal structure known as the virtual realm siphon completed, the once sacred grounds were enveloped in a peculiar metallic framework. It was as if tangible spiritual energy was drawn from an unseen fissure, subsequently compressed through myriad processes into a reservoir for energy storage. In the walled garden, the statues of the venerable saints surrounding the obelisk were toppled and shattered amidst the surging spiritual energy, akin to a tsunami. Only one statue, distinct in form from all the other saints, trembled slightly, yet remained steadfast, as if mocking this foolish endeavor. As the Watchers extracted energy from the virtual realm through the remnants left by the Harbinger, their old adversary, the Wanderer, who had retreated into a defensive shell, was simultaneously engaged in foundational construction of a colossal edifice on their home planet. There exists a reason why this civilization, with its profound expertise in machinery and cybernetics, could be classified as a lost empire. Ancient history accounts for one aspect, and a formidable fleet strength accounts for another. Beyond these, a more significant reason prevails, the possession of ancient repositories of knowledge. These repositories were all concentrated on a nondescript planet, yet when the Wanderers unearthed them, they were certain that these ancient archives were relics left behind by the Harbinger. This was the Wanderer's secret. Their relocation from the Ring World to their current position was undoubtedly influenced by the necessity to evade their enemies, yet the selection of this location was meticulously calculated. To this end, they were willing to reconstruct their homeland in this place, and had tirelessly sought to unravel the mysteries of the archives over the centuries. The scientists they summoned were the most elite, those who earned their trust, and they would come to the repositories, never to depart from that planet again, dedicating nearly every moment to extracting data from the archives. Any information gleaned from this source, even if minuscule, was invaluable to the Wanderers. Throughout this protracted age of desolation, they devoted themselves wholeheartedly to this pursuit, yearning to uncover the secrets of the Harbinger. Until recently, they successfully extracted a particularly useful piece of data and believed it to be the path taken by the Harbinger. Thus, they resolved to eliminate their old adversaries first, to prevent any interference in their pursuit of this path. However, they did not anticipate that they would find themselves outmatched, forced to retreat within their own territory. After a careful estimation of time, they resolved to commence the plan ahead of schedule, proclaiming their grandeur to the entire galaxy as their old adversaries faced obliteration. Unfortunately, the technology they deemed crucial inconveniently resided within Li Wenyuan's database. Catastrophe Plan, Technology Level, 7th Description. Following an in-depth study of the virtual realm, we have confirmed that the large-scale disturbance events occurring here will impact the virtual realm. According to existing theories, a sufficiently immense surge of energy might tear asunder the barriers between two planes, allowing the virtual realm to fall directly into our grasp, far surpassing the power that siphons could extract. Thus, we may attempt to wholly appropriate the energy within the virtual realm before advancing to higher worlds. Special note: this device may annihilate the galaxy. We have painstakingly cultivated its vibrancy, and you wouldn't dare to do such a thing, would you? This was one of the technologies unearthed by Li Wenyuan long ago, marked with a red skull on the technological tree, indicating its perilous nature. However, given its minimal utility to him, Li Wenyuan soon forgot about it. Though he wished to settle accounts with the end of reincarnation, he had no immediate need for such a treacherous technology. The spiritual beacon's incursion into the virtual realm should suffice to trouble the end of reincarnation. The galaxy remained intact, and the virtual realm unharmed, suggesting that humanity had not yet practiced this technology within the galaxy. As for the potential devastation to other galaxies, he remained uncertain. The very name of this technology exuded danger. Should anyone dare to employ it, they would undoubtedly become the galaxy's enemy. End of chapter 98. Countdown to reckoning. As time progressed, the galactic situation underwent yet another transformation. Firstly, the war dynamics between the Qian Empire and the Segurius Revenge Crusade had become sufficiently clear. The Qian Empire, which had previously maintained a slight advantage over Segurius, found itself in a state of defeat due to the sudden acquisition of the Lost Empire fleet by its adversary. Moreover, the fervor for revenge among the Sagurius populace was exceedingly intense. Even the Qian Empire, which had adopted oppressive policies, could not halt their demoralization. In direct confrontations, they were far less resilient than the Sagurians, leading to several significant defeats. However, this merely encapsulated the situation between the Qian Empire and Sagurius, as they now faced a new combatant. Upon perceiving that the war between the Watchers and the Wanderers had reached a stalemate, the Turbulence Empire swiftly unilaterally abrogated the mutual defense agreements previously established with the Qian Empire and several other monarchic civilizations, simultaneously declaring war on both the Qian Empire and Sagurius. This formidable civilization appeared intent on playing the role of a fisherman, seeking to annex both neighbors into their dominion. The other monarchic civilizations, whose defense agreements had been torn asunder, seemed to have anticipated this move, as the Turbulence Empire revoked the agreements. They declared the treaties null and void, opting to act as neutral states providing mediation. In reality, they were all profiting from the war between the Qian Empire and the Sagurius. On the battlefield where the three factions clashed, one could observe weapons from the same civilization equipped on the vessels of two opposing factions. However, the Turbulence Empire, having acted as a mere opportunist, soon realized they were not the ones making the highest level calculations. It seemed that someone had been waiting for their actions for quite some time. As the Turbulence Empire dispatched a significant portion of their fleet to besiege the Qian Empire and the Sagurius, a rebellion suddenly erupted within their own borders. Those peculiar guerrillas, previously thought to have been eradicated, had apparently infiltrated the populace early on and liberated a portion of the military that had been under parasitic control through unknown means. Caught off guard, the vast Turbulence Empire saw a third of its star systems fall within mere months, including many crucial industrial and research planets. Subsequently, this group of Turbulence Empire rebels proclaimed their existence to the galaxy, declaring themselves the true masters of the Turbulence Empire, while denouncing the aquatic parasites as disgraceful usurpers. They vowed to reclaim their former homeland and drive these contemptible beings back into the depths of the ocean. Although no one knew the origins of this rebellion, numerous civilizations that had long-standing grievances with the Turbulence Empire swiftly declared their support for the insurgents and were among the first to recognize their legitimacy. Thus, the Turbulence Empire, which had intended to ensnare its rivals, found itself embroiled in a multifaceted conflict, simultaneously facing considerable interstellar diplomatic pressure and moral condemnation. Besides the chaos erupting here, an unexpected civilization also entered a state of war. For ages, the galaxy had perceived the Dankam Great Clan as a group of pacifists. However, perhaps due to their significant achievements in the virtual realm, their ever-expanding ambitions altered the prevailing mindset of their civilization. After undergoing a series of reforms, the Dankam Great Clan embarked on a path of authoritarianism and militarism. Before other civilizations could react, they swiftly annexed a neighboring civilization, continuing their expansion with a sense of fervor bordering on madness. No one understood the source of their fervor, yet a few resistors, during their struggle, discovered that the Dankam Great Clan, once deemed inferior, had inexplicably surged ahead of them. The most striking indication of this was their production of multiple Titan-class flagships, rendering them nearly unmatched in direct confrontations. Unable to comprehend the sudden strength of the Dankam Great Clan, other civilizations hastily formed alliances to unite against this wildly expanding force. Meanwhile, on the unseen home planet of the Dankam Great Clan, even more sinister events were unfolding. Quickly, all of you to the altar, a powerful scientist barked. His visage twisted with malice as he herded several alien slaves onto the altar, subsequently using his psychic powers to crush their lives, with various organic fluids splattering against the surrounding walls. Afterward, the psychic, amidst the horrific scene, began to pray, incessantly uttering words like circle and sacrifice, seemingly attempting to reverse the impact of the illusory realm upon him. Yet, this was merely superstition. Who could have anticipated that within the once scientifically revered Dankam civilization, individuals would resort to primitive acts of human sacrifice, typically associated with backward tribes? The memory of their scientific incursion into the illusory realm felt like a distant yesterday. It was unclear what had instigated such profound terror in them, leading to a near-total loss of rational thought. However, this phenomenon was not an isolated incident. Within the Dankam community, rumors spread that the more sacrifices made, the greater the chance of redemption, with various chilling scenarios unfolding in the households of every Dankam individual. Before long, the increasingly deranged Dankam civilization committed acts that shocked the galaxy. They herded captured extraterrestrials onto a prison planet and subjected it to a month-long carpet bombing. They referred to this as part of a ritual, yet the galactic civilizations were merely horrified by their cruelty. Even the self-proclaimed tyrants felt a sense of inferiority. Consequently, more civilizations joined the ranks against the Dankam. Initially perplexed by the drastic transformation of this once peaceful civilization, they gradually recalled the warnings from the Guardians regarding the end of the cycle. The more they observed, the more they believed that the Dankam had forged a pact with the end of the cycle, yet unable to repay their debts. They were compelled to exhaust every possible avenue. Upon comparing timelines, they discovered that nearly 50 years had elapsed since the Dankam made significant advancements in the illusory realm, aligning with the critical temporal characteristics of the end of the cycle. Thus, some began to lodge complaints with the Guardians, still engaged in battle with the Wanderers, hoping this idealistic civilization's leaders might provide some guidance. However, the Guardians remained unresponsive, exhibiting their customary arrogance and disdain. Nevertheless, these complaints sparked a revelation for the Dankam civilization. They surmised that the Lost Empire must possess solutions, albeit unwilling to share them with ordinary civilizations. Thus, the Dankam made a choice that astonished all civilizations. They abandoned all colonies, planets, and space stations, disregarding every war, while concentrating their entire fleet